4 company-operated fields and several blocks in various stages of exploration, Pakistan Petroleum Limited is engaged extensively in social and economic development activities across Sindh to benefit underprivileged local communities. The company spent approximately 200 million rupees in Sindh during the last year, funding major projects in community health and education, infrastructure development, and disaster relief and rehabilitation.
PPL मज़ारानी गैस फील्ड आ जेको कम करे असांखे पाणी पुॼाईंदो आ ऐं उन PPL असांखे स्कूल ठाराए ॾिना आहिनि PPL असांजे ॿारनि खे यूनिफॉर्म था ॾियनि PPL वारनि जी हिकिड़ी मोबाइल यूनिट आहे जेको असांजे इलाइक़े माण्हू खे दवाऊं ऐं फ्री में पुॼाईंदा आहिनि कॾहिं असांजो रोड ख़राबु थींदो आहे त असांखे PPL वारा ठाराए ॾींदा आहिनि असां सां तमामु सुठा इलाइक़े वारा सां था हलनि.
The social health of a community depends on easy, affordable access to quality medical care. This requires securing availability of health services easily and on time. In remote areas, successful community health initiatives depend on the accessibility of care and support through outreach efforts that maximize community participation. To this end, PPL mobilizes resources to connect vulnerable populations with skilled health practitioners, free medication and preventive health awareness.
50 किलोमीटर हॉस्पिटल असांखो परे आहे किराओ तकरीबन 100 आहे उन वास्ते असां वटि कॾहिं सवारी हूंदी कॾहिं किराओ न हूंदो डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण सां असांखे बिल्कुलु वॾो फ़ाइदो मिलियो आहे घर घर दवा मिले थी ऐं असांखे जेको आहे सारी सहूलियत न हूंदी अॻ में डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण खां सवाइ हाणे असांखे जेको बीमार माण्हू आहे जल्दी ख़ुशि थी वञे.
पहले मैटरनल मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत ज़्यादा ज़चकी में और उसमें अमवात बहुत ज़्यादा होती थी या कॉम्प्लिकेशन डिसेबिलिटीज़ बहुत हो जाती थी. सेंटर खुलने के बाद मॉर्बिडिटी और मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत कम हुआ है. एंटीनेटल करने से हर चीज़ से इंसान बच जाता है. वो सब कुछ जो है पहले से ही डायग्नोज कर लेते हैं तो इस तरीके से वो कॉम्प्लिकेशन से बच जाते हैं.
PPL recognizes that empowerment and leadership are essential for the enduring success of a community. By imparting analytical skills, education lays the foundations for a resourceful, socially responsible adulthood. It is the students of today who will become community leaders tomorrow with competence to drive local economies, support civil society, and promote education and progressive thinking. PPL invests in the future of Sindh by providing financial and in-kind support to educational institutions and awarding scholarships to deserving students to study at reputed academic institutions.
हालांकि ये जो गांव है वो सिटी के नज़दीक है लेकिन फिर भी यहाँ पर तालीम नहीं थी. गवर्नमेंट का स्कूल वो बंद पड़ा हुआ है. बडेरे के बच्चे तो वो सिटी में पढ़ते थे वो खर्चा अफोर्ड कर सकते थे लेकिन जो गरीब के बच्चे मजदूरों के हारियों के वो नहीं पढ़ते थे लेकिन वो IGCEP स्कूल खुलने के बाद वो अब पढ़ रहे हैं.
Public infrastructure is critical for the effective functioning of a community or society. In Sindh, PPL has funded or directly built basic civic facilities and services such as roads, bridges, potable and irrigation water networks and public buildings including schools, libraries and community centers. As a public sector organization, PPL has played a pivotal role in supplementing the government's relief and rehabilitation efforts for affected communities during natural calamities. To assist victims of the 2010 floods and torrential rains in 2011 and 2012, PPL spent nearly 50 million rupees in providing relief goods and medical services through free camps and mobile medical units to hard-hit communities across Sindh. Following the 2010 floods, PPL initiated a rehabilitation project with a dedicated budget of 50 million rupees in partnership with Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. As a responsible national corporate entity, PPL will continue to strive to improve the well-being and development of local communities, particularly those living around its operational areas. Even so, development gaps in Sindh, much like the rest of the country, are far too wide for the corporate sector to address alone, sustainably, without enhanced engagement of other key stakeholders. It is therefore crucial for government and civil society to join hands with the corporate sector, using their respective strengths to address development challenges, steering marginalized populations and their future generations towards a better life. With 4 company-operated fields and several blocks in various stages of exploration, Pakistan Petroleum Limited is engaged extensively in social and economic development activities across Sindh to benefit underprivileged local communities. The company spent approximately 200 million rupees in Sindh during the last year, funding major projects in community health and education, infrastructure development, and disaster relief and rehabilitation.
PPL मज़ारानी गैस फील्ड आहे जेको कमु करे असांखे पाणी पुॼाईंदो आहे ऐं उन PPL असांखे स्कूल ठाराए ॾिना आहिनि. PPL असांजे ॿारनि खे यूनिफॉर्म था ॾियनि. PPL वारनि जी हिकिड़ी मोबाइल यूनिट आहे जेको असांजे इलाइक़े माण्हू खे दवाऊं ऐं फ्री में पुॼाईंदा आहिनि. कॾहिं असांजो रोड ख़राबु थींदो आहे त असांखे PPL वारा ठाराए ॾींदा आहिनि. असां सां तमामु सुठा इलाइक़े वारा सां था हलनि.
The social health of a community depends on easy, affordable access to quality medical care. This requires securing availability of health services easily and on time. In remote areas, successful community health initiatives depend on the accessibility of care and support through outreach efforts that maximize community participation. To this end, PPL mobilizes resources to connect vulnerable populations with skilled health practitioners, free medication and preventive health awareness.
50 किलोमीटर हॉस्पिटल असांखो परे आहे. किराओ तक़रीबन 100 आहे. उन वास्ते असां वटि कॾहिं सवारी हूंदी कॾहिं किराओ न हूंदो हो. डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण सां असांखे बिल्कुलु वॾो फ़ाइदो मिलियो आहे. घर घर दवा मिले थी ऐं असांखे जेको आहे सवारी सहूलियत न हूंदी हुई अॻ में डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण खां सवाइ. हाणे असांजो जेको बीमार माण्हू आहे जल्दी ख़ुशि थी थो वञे.
पहले मैटरनल मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत ज़्यादा ज़चकी में और उसमें अमवात बहुत ज़्यादा होती थी या कॉम्प्लिकेशन डिसेबिलिटीज़ बहुत हो जाती थी. सेंटर खुलने के बाद मॉर्बिडिटी और मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत कम हुआ है. एंटीनेटल करने से हर चीज़ से इंसान बच जाता है. वो सब कुछ जो है पहले से ही डायग्नोज कर लेते हैं तो इस तरीके से वो कॉम्प्लिकेशन से बच जाते हैं.
PPL recognizes that empowerment and leadership are essential for the enduring success of a community. By imparting analytical skills, education lays the foundations for a resourceful, socially responsible adulthood. It is the students of today who will become community leaders tomorrow, with competence to drive local economies, support civil society, and promote education and progressive thinking. PPL invests in the future of Sindh by providing financial and in-kind support to educational institutions and awarding scholarships to deserving students to study at reputed academic institutions.
हालांकि ये जो गांव है वो सिटी के नज़दीक है, लेकिन फिर भी यहाँ पर तालीम नहीं थी। गवर्नमेंट का स्कूल वो बंद पड़ा हुआ है। बडेरे के बच्चे हो तो वो सिटी में पढ़ते थे, वो खर्चा अफोर्ड कर सकते थे, लेकिन जो गरीब के बच्चे हैं, मजदूरों के, हारियों के, वो नहीं पढ़ते थे। लेकिन वो IGCEP स्कूल खुलने के बाद वो अब पढ़ रहे हैं।
Public infrastructure is critical for the effective functioning of a community or society. In Sindh, PPL has funded or directly built basic civic facilities and services such as roads, bridges, potable and irrigation water networks, and public buildings including schools, libraries, and community centers. As a public sector organization, PPL has played a pivotal role in supplementing the government's relief and rehabilitation efforts for affected communities during natural calamities. To assist victims of the 2010 floods and torrential rains in 2011 and 2012, PPL spent nearly 50 million rupees in providing relief goods and medical services through free camps and mobile medical units to hard-hit communities across Sindh. Following the 2010 floods, PPL initiated a rehabilitation project with a dedicated budget of 50 million rupees in partnership with Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. As a responsible national corporate entity, PPL will continue to strive to improve the well-being and development of local communities, particularly those living around its operational areas. Even so, development gaps in Sindh, much like the rest of the country, are far too wide for the corporate sector to address alone, sustainably, without enhanced engagement of other key stakeholders. It is therefore crucial for government and civil society to join hands with the corporate sector, using their respective strengths to address development challenges, steering marginalized populations and their future generations towards a better life.
सूबा सिंध में 4 कंपनी ऑपरेटेड फील्ड्स और कई ब्लॉक्स के साथ जो एक्सप्लोरेशन के मुख्तलिफ मराहिल में हैं, पाकिस्तान पेट्रोलियम लिमिटेड पसमानदा मुकामी आबादियों को फायदा पहुंचाने के लिए बड़े पैमाने पर समाजी और इक़्तिसादी सरगर्मियों में मसरूफ है। कंपनी ने गुज़िश्ता साल के दौरान अपने कॉरपोरेट समाजी भलाई प्रोग्राम के तहत तकरीबन 200 मिलियन रुपए सिंध की मुकामी आबादी की सेहत और तालीम, बुनियादी ढांचे की तामीर और कुदरती आफात के बाद इमदाद व बहाली के बड़े मंसूबों पर खर्च किए हैं।
PPL मज़ारानी गैस फील्ड आहे जेको कमु करे असांखे पाणी पुॼाईंदो आहे ऐं उन PPL असांखे स्कूल ठाराए ॾिना आहिनि। PPL असांजे ॿारनि खे यूनिफॉर्म था ॾियनि। PPL वारनि जी हिकिड़ी मोबाइल यूनिट आहे जेको असांजे इलाइक़े माण्हुनि खे दवाऊं ऐं फ्री में पुॼाईंदा आहिनि। कॾहिं असांजो रोड ख़राबु थींदो आहे त असांखे PPL वारा ठाराए ॾींदा आहिनि। असां सां तमामु सुठा इलाइक़े वारा था हलनि।
मुकामी आबादियों की समाजी सेहत की देखभाल मेयारी तिब्बी सहूलियात की सस्ती और आसान फराहमी पर मुनहसर है। दूर दराज इलाकों में मुकामी आबादी की सेहत को बरकरार रखने के लिए कामयाब इक़दामात का इन्हिसार इन कोशिशों पर है जो देखभाल और ताउन तक रसाई के साथ साथ मुकामी आबादियों की ज्यादा शराकत को मुमकिन बनाए। इस मकसद के लिए PPL अपने वसाइल के जरिए हुनरमंद तिब्बी अमले, मुफ्त अद्वियात और हिफ्ज़ाने सेहत की आगाही पर मबनी प्रोग्रामों को हसास आबादी के साथ मरबूत करती है।
50 किलोमीटर हॉस्पिटल असांखों परे आहे, किराओ तक़रीबन 100 आहे। उन वास्ते असां वटि कॾहिं सवारी हूंदी, कॾहिं किराओ न हूंदो हो। डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण सां असांखे बिल्कुलु वॾो फ़ाइदो मिलियो आहे। घर घर दवा मिले थी ऐं असांखे जेको आहे सवारी सहूलियत न हूंदी हुई अॻ में डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण खां सवाइ। हाणे असांजो जेको बीमार माण्हू आहे जल्दी ख़ुशि थी वञे।
पहले मैटरनल मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत ज़्यादा ज़चकी में और उसमें अमवात बहुत ज़्यादा होती थी, या कॉम्प्लिकेशन डिसेबिलिटीज़ बहुत हो जाती थी। सेंटर खुलने के बाद मॉर्बिडिटी और मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत कम हुआ है। एंटीनेटल करने से हर चीज़ से इंसान बच जाता है। वो सब कुछ जो है पहले से ही डायग्नोज कर लेते हैं, तो इस तरीके से वो कॉम्प्लिकेशन से बच जाते हैं।
PPL इस बात को तस्लीम करती है कि क़यादत और लोगों को बाइख्तियार बनाना मुकामी आबादियों की कामयाबी के लिए लाज़मी है। तज्जियाती महारत की फरहमी के जरिए तालीम, वसाइल से बहरमंद और समाजी तौर पर जिम्मेदार नौजवान नस्ल की परवरिश के लिए बुनियाद फराहम करती है। ये आज के तलबा ही हैं जो कल मुकामी आबादी के रहनुमा बनेंगे, और इनकी सलाहियतें मुकामी मईशत को चलाने के साथ साथ समाजी इदारों को सहारा देने और तालीम और तरक्की पसंद सोच को फरोग देने के लिए भी कारफरमा होंगी। सिंध के बेहतर मुस्तकबिल के लिए PPL तालीमी इदारों की माली इमदाद के अलावा दीगर जराए से भी ताउन करती है और मुस्तहिक तलबा को मारूफ दर्सगाहों में तालीम हासिल करने के लिए वज़ाइफ भी फराहम करती है।
हालांकि ये जो गांव है वो सिटी के नज़दीक है, लेकिन फिर भी यहाँ पर तालीम नहीं थी। गवर्नमेंट का स्कूल वो बंद पड़ा हुआ है। बडेरे के बच्चे हो तो वो सिटी में पढ़ते थे, वो खर्चा अफोर्ड कर सकते थे, लेकिन जो गरीब के बच्चे, मजदूरों के, हारियों के, वो नहीं पढ़ते थे। लेकिन वो STCF स्कूल खुलने के बाद वो अब पढ़ रहे हैं।
किसी भी आबादी या मुआशरे के मौसर तरीके से काम करने के लिए अवामी सतह पर बुनियादी ढांचे की जरूरत होती है। सिंध में PPL ने शहरी सहूलियात मसलन सड़कों, पुलों, पीने के पानी और आबपाशी के जराए, स्कूलों, लाइब्रेरियों और कम्युनिटी मराकज समेत कई इमारात की बराह रास्त तामीर की है या इनके क़याम के लिए इमदाद फराहम की है। एक पब्लिक सेक्टर इदारा होने के नाते PPL ने कुदरती आफात के दौरान हुकूमत की जानिब से मुतासरा आबादियों की इमदाद और बहाली के लिए किए जाने वाले इक़दामात में हाथ बटाया है। 2010 के सैलाब और 2011 और 2012 की तूफानी बारिशों के दौरान PPL ने सिंध की सबसे ज्यादा मुतासरा मुकामी आबादियों के लिए मुफ्त कैंप्स और मोबाइल मेडिकल यूनिट्स के जरिए तिब्बी खिदमात और इमदादी सामान की फरहमी की मद में तकरीबन 50 मिलियन रुपए खर्च किए। 2010 के सैलाब के बाद PPL ने 50 मिलियन रुपए की मुख्तस करदा रकम से मुतासरीन की बहाली का एक प्रोग्राम पाकिस्तान पॉवर्टी एलिवेशन फंड के इश्तराक से शुरू किया। एक जिम्मेदार कॉरपोरेट इदारे के तौर पर PPL मुकामी आबादी, खुसूसन वो जो उसके ऑपरेशनल इलाकों के गिरदोनवाह में बसती है, की बहबूद और तरक्की की कोशिशें जारी रखेगी। ताहम मुल्क के दीगर हिस्सों की तरह सिंध में भी तरक्की के लिए की जाने वाली कोशिशों में एक बड़े खला को पायदारी से पुर करना कॉरपोरेट शोबे के लिए तन्हा मुमकिन नहीं, जब तक कि दीगर शराकतदारों का भरपूर ताउन मयसर न हो। इसलिए ये इंतहाई जरूरी है कि हुकूमत और समाजी भलाई के दीगर इदारे कॉरपोरेट सेक्टर के साथ मिलकर काम करते हुए अपनी सलाहियतों के मुताबिक तरक्की की राह में हायल रुकावटों का मुकाबला करें, ताकि पसमानदगी में घिरी हुई आबादी और उनकी आइंदा नस्लों के एक बड़े हिस्से को मेयारी जिंदगी की नवीद सुनाई जा सके।
With 4 company-operated fields and several blocks in various stages of exploration, Pakistan Petroleum Limited is engaged extensively in social and economic development activities across Sindh to benefit underprivileged local communities. The company spent approximately 200 million rupees in Sindh during the last year, funding major projects in community health and education, infrastructure development, and disaster relief and rehabilitation.
PPL मज़ारानी गैस फील्ड आहे जेको कमु करे असांखे पाणी पुॼाईंदो आहे ऐं उन PPL असांखे स्कूल ठाराए ॾिना आहिनि PPL असांजे ॿारनि खे यूनिफॉर्म था ॾियनि PPL वारनि जी हिकिड़ी मोबाइल यूनिट आहे जेको असांजे इलाइक़े माण्हू खे दवाऊं ऐं फ्री में पुॼाईंदा आहिनि कॾहिं असांजो रोड ख़राबु थींदो आहे त असांखे PPL वारा ठाराए ॾींदा आहिनि असां सां तमामु सुठा इलाइक़े वारा था हलनि.
The social health of a community depends on easy, affordable access to quality medical care. This requires securing availability of health services easily and on time. In remote areas, successful community health initiatives depend on the accessibility of care and support through outreach efforts that maximize community participation. To this end, PPL mobilizes resources to connect vulnerable populations with skilled health practitioners, free medication and preventive health awareness.
50 किलोमीटर हॉस्पिटल असांखो परे आहे किराओ तक़रीबन 100 आहे उन वास्ते असां वटि कॾहिं सवारी हूंदी कॾहिं किराओ न हूंदो हो डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण सां असांखे बिल्कुलु वॾो फ़ाइदो मिलियो आहे घर घर दवा मिले थी ऐं असांखे जेको आहे सवारी सहूलियत न हूंदी हुई अॻ में डिस्पेंसरी जे अचण खां सवाइ हाणे असांखे जेको बीमार माण्हू आहे जल्दी ख़ुशि थी थो वञे.
पहले मैटरनल मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत ज़्यादा जचकी में और उसमें अमवात बहुत ज़्यादा होती थी यहाँ कॉम्प्लिकेशन डिसेबिलिटीज़ बहुत हो जाती थी. सेंटर खुलने के बाद मॉर्बिडिटी और मोटिलिटी रेट बहुत कम हुआ है. एंटीनेटर करने से हर चीज़ से इंसान बच जाता है वो सब कुछ जो है पहले से ही डायग्नोज कर लेते हैं तो इस तरीके से वो कॉम्प्लिकेशन से बच जाते हैं.
PPL recognizes that empowerment and leadership are essential for the enduring success of a community. By imparting analytical skills, education lays the foundations for a resourceful, socially responsible adulthood. It is the students of today who will become community leaders tomorrow with competence to drive local economies, support civil society, and promote education and progressive thinking. PPL invests in the future of Sindh by providing financial and in-kind support to educational institutions and awarding scholarships to deserving students to study at reputed academic institutions.
हालांकि ये जो गांव है वो सिटी के नज़दीक है लेकिन फिर भी यहाँ पर तालीम नहीं थी. गवर्नमेंट का स्कूल वो बंद पड़ा हुआ है. बडेरे के बच्चे हो तो वो सिटी में पढ़ते थे वो खर्चा अफोर्ड कर सकते थे लेकिन जो गरीब के बच्चे मजदूरों के हारियों के वो नहीं पढ़ते थे लेकिन वो IGCEP स्कूल खुलने के बाद वो अब पढ़ रहे हैं.
Public infrastructure is critical for the effective functioning of a community or society. In Sindh, PPL has funded or directly built basic civic facilities and services such as roads, bridges, potable and irrigation water networks and public buildings including schools, libraries and community centers. As a public sector organization, PPL has played a pivotal role in supplementing the government's relief and rehabilitation efforts for affected communities during natural calamities. To assist victims of the 2010 floods and torrential rains in 2011 and 2012, PPL spent nearly 50 million rupees in providing relief goods and medical services through free camps and mobile medical units to hard-hit communities across Sindh. Following the 2010 floods, PPL initiated a rehabilitation project with a dedicated budget of 50 million rupees in partnership with Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. As a responsible national corporate entity, PPL will continue to strive to improve the well-being and development.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention please? Assalamu alaikum everyone and a very good afternoon. Before starting the event, we would like to go for the recitation of the Holy Quran. So I would request Mr. Adil Ahmed to please come on stage. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah. Now, I would like to request all of you to please rise for the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest, distinguished speakers, senior government officials, guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome. On behalf of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, I feel extremely pleased to welcome you all to the Sindh Energy Conference 2022. And it gives me immense pleasure to be standing in front of the most esteemed personalities of Pakistan oil and gas fraternity to host this conference. Before we start the event, I would like to express my gratitude to our gold sponsor, Pakistan Petroleum Limited. Secondly, I would also like to thank our chief guest, Mr. Imtiaz Ahmed Sheikh, Energy Minister of Sindh, and all the members of the Sindh Energy Department. Without their patronage, this conference would not prove to be valuable to this extent. Mr. Imtiaz is indisposed, but he has conveyed his wishes and regards. I am also grateful to all the expert speakers who have come to share their knowledge with us today. I also welcome the representative of media who have joined us. Energy is a primary input for almost all activities and is therefore vital for improvement in quality of life. Its use in sectors such as industry, transport, wide range of agriculture and household services has compelled us to focus our attention to ensure its continuous supply to meet our ever-increasing demands. Energy-related problems are not new. The energy-related problems are as old as 2,500 years ago. The early Romans and Greeks faced fuel shortages, as wood was their primary source of energy. They had to import wood from very faraway places. Fossil fuel is still the main source of energy. Today, we are facing the peak of oil and gas utilization. Energy policies today has two choices. One path leads to the fossil fuel, which means continuing as we have been for a number of years, that is, emphasizing energy quantity by finding more amount of fossil fuels. The second part is the soft path, which leads to the energy alternative that emphasizes energy quality and are also renewable, flexible, and more environmental friendly. The soft path relies mainly on renewable energy, that is sunlight, wind, biomass, tidal energy, etc. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before formally starting the conference, I would like to call on stage Mr. Shahid Mahmood Khan, Chairman PIP, and MD Parco for the welcome address. Sir, please. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Distinguished guests and my colleagues, I would like to welcome you all to Sindh Energy Conference 2022 on behalf of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan. PIP serves as a leading industry think tank which provides knowledge base and a platform to discuss and find future energy directions. I am particularly grateful to the Government of Sindh for supporting this event, which signifies seriousness and commitment to the energy sector by the provincial government. I am particularly today we gather here to discuss and learn about the major trends and developments in the global energy sector, with opportunities in the local perspective and associated challenges. As we all know, energy plays a pivotal role in the driving the economy of the country across all sectors, be it industry, agriculture, trade, technology, or transport. In a developing country like Pakistan, where high growth rates are essential to meet the aspiration of young and rising population, energy supplies and its sources take center stage in the political economy and societal discourse. Through the platform of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, we continue to bring together all stakeholders so that we become a common platform and a joint strength to move toward mutually agreed upon roadmap. As we all know, Pakistan energy demand is growing every year, which requires us to think beyond traditional means of supplies and explore new avenues with increasing focus on sustainability, reliability, and affordability. We have already seen LNG imported and local coal, nuclear, hydel sources finding their way into the power generation now. We should feel lucky that our province has got massive indigenous potential resources which can meet country's growing demand. Both electrons generated from Thar coal fields are already flowing into the national economy. Turbines in our wind corridors providing green energy to the system. Our landscape is enriched with sunlight, providing great opportunities to harness solar energy. Various projects in the indigenous space have already been materialized, proving the commercial viability and providing a way forward for future investments. Building up on the current diversification of our energy mix, and in an environment where commodity prices are elevated to an unaffordable level, it is high time we start thinking how to capitalize on emerging technologies including green hydrogen, waste management, waste recycling, waste to energy creation, and even to sophisticated methods where waste plastic is used to blend with crude oil to produce petroleum products. I'm glad to share you that the theme of our conference today is to understand waste management concepts so that we can come up with innovative solutions to resolve energy challenges which our nation is facing. In the following session, my distinguished colleagues from the industry, government, as well as academia will enlighten us to these burning topics. Together, we represent the best minds in different areas of expertise from multiple sectors. All the speakers are subject matter experts and are leaders in their respective profession. I express my profound appreciation to the sponsoring companies without whom this event would have not been possible. To my fellow directors, colleagues, the energy industry, members of the government, academia, and media, your support will be vital to address the energy challenges. Together, let's fulfill PIP's vision to be a trusted advisor on energy to the government and industry. At this occasion, I would like to highlight the global energy transformation towards cleaner fuels. We as a country would need to catch up fast with the energy transition to fulfill our environment commitment for cleaner fuels and to safeguard the future of our next generations. Our province is best placed to provide such solution to the country. In such a rapidly changing environment, we must work harder and raise the bar to make our country grow faster in a sustainable and environmental friendly way. I hope this conference will show us a direction to make major strides in the energy sector and aim for a clean and green future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Universities have a role to produce good quality human resources to convert ideas into actionable plans. What universities should be doing has a tertiary role in successful waste to energy projects. Ladies and gentlemen, for our first presentation, I would like to request, the topic of the first presentation is Professional Human Resource Development Role of Universities, which will be presented by Dr. Sarosh Lodi, who is the Vice-Chancellor of NED University of Engineering and Technology. His profile is displayed on the screen, and we have his online video.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. I'm extremely thankful to the organizers for inviting me to such an important discussion where we are talking about strategies and planning of waste to energy. However, I feel that there is a very important role the universities have to do in order to develop the good quality human resource so that the plans, so that the ideas could be converted into actionable plans. Unfortunately, we have had so many plans, but unfortunately we have had so many ideas without actionable plans, and then that's why we have not been able to reap the benefits. I'll give you an example and the key challenges. Let's talk about the key challenges. The key challenges is the quality, principles and application in developing these actionable plans. Then we have to have the visionary leadership to develop these plans. And above all, we have to have the right people for the right job in order to build the capacity to execute those plans. Now, before I start about the challenges, one of the most important things that I have always been explaining is the example of countries like China and Singapore. China is one of the largest country in the world population-wise, while Singapore is one of the smallest country population-wise in the world. But both the countries, irrespective of the size of their populations, have good quality, have strong economies. And the reason of strong economies is nothing but good quality human resource. And they have been able to come up with the challenges which are mentioned here, and they have developed a good quality human resource which have not only been able to develop the plans, the visionary plans, but the actionable items, and eventually executed them in a manner where the countries have prospered in less than 50 years or around 50 years. And these people have transformed the countries through their strong economies. And that is the model that we should be following. And I would like to mention a few very important things that the universities at the tertiary level should be doing so that the future of our next generations could be secured. One of the most important things is engaging with the future, to look through the window of future and see what will be the challenges that the coming generations have to overcome, and train them and prepare them accordingly. These are the few examples. At Naheed University, we have developed a cooperative education program where the students are sent for not only one internship, but they are actually involved in one company throughout 4 years of their study at Naheed University. They spend all their summer and winter vacations in these companies so that they not only learn the knowledge in the university, but be able to see the execution and implementation of knowledge in the real life. And I hope that this exercise will help them seamlessly integrate into the professional practice. The other thing is to develop and foster the idea of entrepreneurship and private businesses. For that, we have established a national incubation center with the help from the Ministry of IT. It was established in 2018. So far, the university has incubated 197 companies, and out of which 88 has graduated by completing the training period. At present, there are 55 companies which are presently being incubated, and these companies have created around 95,000 jobs in less than 5 years. The total revenue that they've generated is about 3.15 million, and the investment they have raised is 4.4 million. And the idea is to see how the world is progressing and how the other countries have been able to get the benefit of investing into entrepreneurship, and I hope this will turn into a big success. One of our biggest success of incubation is Bakar, which everybody is familiar with, and Bakar alone has provided more than 900,000 jobs. The other idea is to bring the industry and the university closer, to create a sustainable platform where the university and industry can work together so that whatever intellectual properties are developed in the universities can be converted into tangible businesses and tangible products, and at the same time the university shall provide the platform for the sustainable interaction between the industry and the university. I must mention here that the government of Sindh has pledged, allowed us to create, to establish this technology park in a public-private partnership mode, and inshallah very soon the project will be in execution mode. We're looking at an investment of about 8 billion rupees, and through a private-public partnership, and this will bring in a large number of technology companies to come and work on the university campus, which will provide tremendous opportunities for the utilization of our highly capable faculty, developed research infrastructure, and above all, the students who will be working in these technology parks as the time will go by. We have also been participating in different STEM activities, and one of the activities is to work with Magnify Science, and we have had a fair in Thar in its Islam Court, where the students, school students and other students from the rural areas of Sindh were invited to participate so that we can highlight the importance of science in their professional life and in their future. We also have a Thar mobility program for the students, where the students from Thar district are brought into Karachi, and they work with the students in Karachi, and the school students from Karachi go and work with the students in Thar under different positive activities so that we can train them to enhance their skill and provide them the exposure, which is absolutely important. We have had a Block 2 coal mine villages mobility in collaboration with Sindh Engro Coal Mining Company, where the students were involved in development of different projects, science-based projects. Naheed University and its faculty is involved in developing education resources in STEM education, and they have developed textbooks and the teacher's manual and implemented in a few schools in Karachi, which are highly focused and indigenized towards the learning process in Pakistan. We are also very actively involved in digital independence and capacity building of people in Thar, especially in Mitti, because we have a campus in Thar Parker where we are involving young school students to develop different products, and they have been taught how to develop these products, especially cultural nature, and how to sell them through OLX platform. And this activity was a huge success. Then we have been outreaching to different remote areas of rural Sindh, where we have developed a cognitive assessment of people, patients. We have had a medical camp there where the technology-enabled technological assessment was done for the people in Ghotki. And similarly, we are also involved in developing a special robot for the Center for Autism in Karachi, and this robot helps the students to learn them, and they actually take them through the remedial education course where the limitation because of the autism could be limited and could be improved. Similarly, NED University is also working with specially abled people, and we are working with a school in Karachi which is providing education to deaf and blind school students, and NED University is providing them with the technology support which has improved the capability to learn. We are also involved in improving the climate change and in mitigating the climate change in the city, and we have been involved in planting very extensively Miyawaki forest throughout our campus and at different prominent locations in the city. So far we have established, we have planted 8,400 trees in form of Miyawaki forest, and we plan to develop another 300 Miyawaki forests at different locations in the country. Here I must mention the tremendous support provided by our several alumni, and special mention should go to Colonel Zafar and Sohail Bashir, along with the support from Bank Al Habib and Park Suzuki. The second important thing is whatever the research is being done, it has to be relevant to what the needs of the society is, and I feel that it's the university's responsibility not only to understand and palpate the importance of the relevance and the problems in the community, but must develop the capacity to solve them. Here are the few examples. We have established a website where the carbon dioxide mitigation is provided in real time at NED University campus, and obviously mitigating climate change is one of the important things. NED University has established an advanced center for renewable energies, and this is supported by the government of Sindh. We have a state-of-the-art testing facility, and we provide a lot of commercial testing to the solar panels and other paraphernalia related to solar technologies for testing. We have also reached out to province of Balochistan, and after the 2013 earthquake in district of Avaran, we were able to develop and implement 50,000 houses in rural areas of Balochistan, which are adobe earthquake resistant houses. NED University was actively involved and has been actively involved in developing technical documents, and these are some of the examples which started in 2007, and up to 2021 we have been part of developing different building code provisions, and finally the building code of 2021 in collaboration with Pakistan Engineering Council. The recent floods of 2020 has devastated the entire city, and I'm very proud to say that NED University was approached by the government of Sindh, and we have developed the GIS analysis and have developed the hydraulic design of major nalas in Karachi, and the rehabilitation work is in process. And looking into the future, we have the Center for Virtual Reality, where the students are trained to understand the importance of virtual reality and implement them in the real life beyond gaming. So this is an extensively important learning tool so that the students could learn the future technologies. NED University is also aware of the environment problems and the solid waste problems in the city, and we have developed a smart vending machine where the plastic could be recycled, and this could be placed at different prominent locations for recycling, and there is a system of rewarding the people who put their plastic bottles for recycling. We are also involved in a project with Procter & Gamble for industrial quality assurance based on artificial intelligence. I must mention here the importance of the cyber security for the instruments and the equipment that we use in our daily life, starting from cell phone to any other digital transaction, especially the banking transactions. NED University Center for Cyber Security has developed a very important platform to provide cyber security to the capital market. And we have developed this product in collaboration with NCCPL, a company which monitors trading of shares in the country, and we are hopeful that this product will eventually be used by major capital companies and by major banks in Pakistan. The world was devastated by the pandemic, COVID-19, in early part of 2020. And the entire world was shut down, the businesses were affected, and once again we were contacted by the government of Sindh to provide them with a system that not only acquires data but should enable them to make informed decisions. And with the support from the government of Sindh, our neurocomputation lab at the National Center of Artificial Intelligence has developed a database and a tracking system for the government of Sindh to help enable them to make decisions about the spread of COVID-19 in the early part of 2020. This slide shows one of the applications of the product that we have developed, the database for the government of Sindh, where we can see where we could predict, depending on the spread and the number of cases every day, what should be an average increase and decrease for the next 7 to 14 days. And this provided and this remained very useful for the people to make decisions. And during the COVID time, obviously, a lot of people try to develop life supporting systems, and similarly, NED University has developed an indigenous, I must emphasize, an indigenous ventilator working on nth mode. So it has the capability to compete and develop and be used on patients also. We got the provisional license from the Pakistan Engineering Council, and we are in the process of getting the commercial production license here, and inshallah I hope that this license, this particular product will pave the way for us to get into the medical equipment and devices manufacturing. Our team is not only involved in COVID pandemic, but during the COVID pandemic and then later on, a group of our faculty members along with the students have developed a state-of-the-art smart fan, which is a DC fan, which saves a tremendous amount of energy and electricity. And it is a remote control device which has a capability to learn by use the practice or the usage of the fan, and then it can alter the speed automatically based on artificial intelligence subroutines. Now we have partnered with a few local fan manufacturers to make this a commercially viable and a product available in the market. Similarly, our team is extensively working on an electric motorbike, and this motorbike is very different from the other motorbikes commercially available. They have problems, and based on the problems, we have not only designed a completely new propelling system, but the complete new battery pack and the recharging of the battery is designed, implemented and fabricated at NED University. We will soon be getting into partnership for its commercial production. Similarly, we have developed a blockchain-based verification of documents, which obviously will be an important thing, but above all, one of the future technologies is the blockchain. And the blockchain is not limited to cryptocurrency only. We have seen here, and we want to implement the blockchain technology into the use in several uses, and one of the uses is the verification of our documents, which can be verified through a QR code anywhere in the world. With this, there is a long list of things that I would like to mention, but because of the opacity of the time, I've decided to limit myself. Once again, for me, one of the most important things for the university is to look into the future, select the right people, train them and train them well, so that we bring in the critical mass, which is important for the economic development of this country. In the end, I would once again like to thank the organizers for providing me with this opportunity, and I hope that we have the capacity, we have the plans, and we have the implementation mechanism of not only converting waste to energy, but to use the technology, for improving the quality of life for the citizens of this country. Thank you very much.
Well, that was a very enriching presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our second topic for today is redefining waste management using sustainable technologies. And to present this, we have Mr. Mohammad Idrees, who is General Manager Business Development at Engro Energy Limited. But before starting his presentation, I would like to request Mr. Ehsan Zafar, who is the Group CEO, Engro Energy Limited, who would be giving his opening remarks. Sir, please. Thank you.
Honorable Shahid Mahmood Saab, Asim Khan Saab, Wasi Secretary Energy Abu Bakar Madni, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Today a topic has been given to us which is related to utilization of waste, or rather gainful utilization of waste, and our Vice President, Mr. Idrees, who is looking after the Business Development Division, and he's also looking after the supply chain side of Engro Polymer, would share with you a very thoughtful and meaningful presentation. So I would not like to take more time. I was requested to give a preamble, and I'll just share my thoughts on today's event. I was going through the agenda of today's session, and I found out that the agenda is extremely diversified, very wide. It talks about human development. We just heard Sarosh Lodi Sahab talking about startups and artificial intelligence and all of this. Very impressive presentation that he just gave. And today's agenda also talks about sustainability all the way to coal gasification. So on one hand, we will be discussing sustainability, and on the other hand, we will be talking about indigenization of resources, which few people will think indirectly conflict with sustainability, but I would like to share my thoughts on it today. So as the agenda is, let me just throw some light on sustainability part first. Pakistan is a signatory of Paris Agreement. Our government and representative went to Paris some time back. We signed off a consent that by 2050 we will also try our level best to become net zero. We spoke about reducing the carbon footprint. We talked about reducing greenhouse gases. But how can we achieve this as a country? Should we go and really be part of this race? Or should we think what is important for our nation? In my humble opinion, sustainability for Pakistan should be first focused on water conservation. It should be first focused on utilization of waste, which we will just discuss. Idrees will come and make this presentation. And then we should talk about reducing the emissions and going towards net zero. So that is the first part. And as a company, I'm representing Engro here. We are very clear about this, because what we try to do, we try to resolve the pressing issue of our times, the pressing issue that the nation is facing, and therefore Engro as a corporate citizen will try to play its role in what consent we have given to the Paris Agreement, which means that yes, as a corporate citizen, we will try to help our government, help our country to align with this net zero mission. And for that, we will be doing some part, in utilization of waste and some part in water conservation also. So that is something to do with sustainability. Now I'll move to the next topic, which is very close to my heart, which is coal gasification. And I think one of the representatives and speaker will talk about this, but since I've been working in Thar for the last 10 years, and we are working very closely with government of Sindh. Bakar Madni is sitting here, Secretary Saab, and he will also maybe touch upon it. Thar coal is a natural resource which Alhamdulillah Pakistan has, and we need to benefit from it. In the entire world, it is proven that not just bituminous and subbituminous coal, but the lignite coal which we have in Thar can be utilized for conversion into gaseous form, which is coal gasification, or into liquid form. So you can convert this into gas, you can convert it into olefins, polyolefins, you can convert it into diesel, you can liquefy it. But before that, we need to understand that right now, even after COVID, we have realized this, that we are in a state of emergency in this country. We all know that the imported coal price is touching around between $250 to $300 a ton. We all know what is the LNG spot price and the LNG long-term contracts. Currently, in a situation where Thar coal is still not economically viable, our cost is 1/3 or even less the cost of the imported fuel. So just imagine a mine which is not economically viable is at a 1/3 cost of the imported coal. What will happen if this mine is expanded? It will become perhaps 1/4 or 1/5 or 1/10 the cost of the imported coal. So there has to be an emergency in utilizing our indigenous resources, whether you use it for power, you use it for gasification, or you use it for liquefaction. But in my opinion, the next conference that the Energy Department should host, or Pakistan Petroleum should host, should be towards linking indigenization and sustainability. These two topics should be linked together. People think that whenever we'll talk about coal, we are talking about, polluting the environment, which is not the fact. If you talked about indigenous coal, you are actually talking about maintaining the carbon footprint, but actually improving on the foreign exchange drain that the company is seeing. So instead of importing, getting the imported coal or imported fuel, 50% of your energy mix right now is imported fuel. So instead of importing energy, you should have your own resources. So with these words, these are my thoughts on the very diversified agenda that you guys have decided for today. We will today talk about the fact that Pakistan is the 6th populous country in the world. We are producing around 20 million tons of solid waste on a yearly basis. Our per capita, generation of waste is 0.45 kg, per person. Our rate of increase in waste is 2.4% per year. We are dumping our waste on landfill sites. There is no other way to dump it, so we are dumping it and dumping it and dumping it. And as a result of that, we are facing greenhouse gases emissions, we are toxifying the underground water. So therefore, we'll talk about today how to utilize this waste by using advanced technologies and converting them into RDF technology. And there is I think industry already there in Lahore. We just need to make a use of it. So my compliment to all those people who have organized this event today. Thank you so much. And that's all from my side. Thank you, Idrees. You're invited.
Thank you, Ehsan, for the opening remarks, and I'm grateful to the forum and Asim Saab for giving us the opportunity to speak here. So had a first interaction with Asim Saab back in 2018, where he visited Thar, and we made a visit to the first Thar coal mine of the indigenous coal. So essence, I'll take a cue from what Ehsan has said. Sustainability and indigenization. So I see, for a country like Pakistan, sustainability is like sticking your neck out. So you have to have a look at where the world is going towards and what are the initiatives that we need to look at in order to get, the max out of it, and also in order to sort of avoid the penalties which are going to come in the future. And indigenization is like keeping your feet on the ground. That's as important as keeping your feet on the ground. And indigenization of the local resources, as Ehsan has already talked about. So we've been dealing with this waste for the past 2 years, and I'll share with you the journey of Engro energy that we've been through, and we have seen the entire supply chain, not only in the province of Sindh, but also in Lahore. And we have looked at various different options that are available out there. And as an organization, Engro, we are always looking at solving the pressing issues of our time, but that too in the most efficient manner. And there are a number of options available to get rid of the problem of waste disposal. But we need to look at what is the most sustainable way and what is the most efficient way to do that. And we'll have a discussion on that. So we'll talk about the problem statement. Obviously, the waste disposal is a problem which is there for the governments, and government of Sindh is primarily the problem owner in the province of Sindh, who actually wants this problem to be resolved. And then we look at the waste management landscape, different solutions, and the solution that we are proposing, and the potential market, and we'll also have a global perspective, what is actually being done in this regard. So as Ehsan Saab has already talked about, so we are the 6th most populated country in the world, and generating roughly 30 million tons of waste on an annual basis, and our per capita generation is 0.4 kg per person per day. And this varies from sort of villages to the normal cities to the metropolitan cities. So as you go to metropolitan cities like Karachi, Lahore, these averages are even close to 0.55 and 0.6 versus a global, globally the average is 0.74 kg. So the disposal of this waste is a great challenge that we are facing. And not only that, once this waste ends up at the landfill site, it stays there. one is the problem that we are getting short of the spaces, that where do we dump this waste to. And the second thing is, once it is lying over there, after certain chemical reactions and processes, it starts emitting greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases are, as you would know, they have a much higher carbon impact on the environment even versus carbon dioxide. And then other problems of leaching and all that, which also contaminates the underground water. And so that's a problem. And it also results in various diseases. And there is, one of the resources from Al Jazeera report, they've been talking about that most of these children are facing difficulties and diseases because of waste problems, one way or the other. So just to, before going into a deep dive, just let's have a look at a macro level what is happening. And how does, this waste, what kind of a journey this waste goes through. So, taking an example of the city of Karachi where we are living, we are talking about a waste generation of roughly from 14,000 to 18,000 tons in a day. And that's roughly 15 to 20% of the total waste generated in the country. So it starts with the waste generation site, which could be any, even a household, a restaurant, or any place. And then it goes to the dustbin site, which is normally the, dustbins which are there in our neighborhood. And then from there, it goes to the garbage transfer station, GTS. There are roughly 6 GTS in Karachi. And from there, it has to go to the landfill site, which is the ultimate destination of this waste. And at the moment, we have just 2, landfill sites, and Government of Sindh is considering another space for this part, because there is a limitation on the space as well. And during that journey, roughly 40% of the waste is disappearing. And where is it going? It is, lying over there in the streets and roads, not even getting to the landfill site. And there are many stakeholders of this waste, because when we started looking at this waste, we found out that perhaps the technology part of utilizing this waste is easier, but the stakeholder management and getting hold of the supply chain is a difficult part in the city of Karachi. And that's because there are a number of visible and invisible stakeholders involved into it. So when you talk about Lahore, you've got 6,000 tons per day of garbage that is available. So there is what we are looking at is even in Karachi, 14 to 18,000 tons. That's huge. And the problem of waste disposal, the problem of emission of greenhouse gases, the problem of water contamination, and the problem of diseases to our children. So that's a problem that we need to resolve, and we have to resolve this problem in the most meaningful and most efficient and effective manner. So globally, you've been looking at these words of reduce. The first thing is charity begins at home. You start reducing the amount of waste that you generate. But then there is a step of reuse, recycle, and recover. So when we talk about this waste disposal problem, obviously there are first 3 things that as citizens becomes our responsibility as well. But once this waste ends up at landfill site, we have to recover this waste in the most meaningful manner. And if you look at the waste is basically energy. It is the form of energy. You have high heating value components. You've got organic material into the waste. You got plastics. You've got paper and flammable material, polythene bags, moisture, dirt. And what we see is when you talk about converting this waste into energy, it really brings in, brings in help in terms of that your reliance on the energy demand is primarily on the imported fuels. And I mean, currently we've been, you've been having a look at the media. The problem that the current government is facing is obviously because of the super cycle of commodities. The prices of energy in terms of imported coal and LNG, they have gone to a level whereby we are not able to import the LNG and fuel to meet our energy requirements. So as we move on now, when you talk about waste, the most commonly used term is waste to energy. And when somebody is telling you that we are doing a waste to energy project, you automatically think that probably waste will come and somehow the other we'll convert into the power and we'll do power generation out of the waste. However, what we have seen looking at the capex and opex numbers involved, that the power generation model is running in many countries across the globe. However, in order to have a sustainable power generation operation through the waste, you need to have that tipping fee involved, whereby the governments actually provide that subsidy or a tipping fee to the power generator, because what you are doing at this point in time, you are trying to resolve a problem of waste disposal for the government. And for that, because they end up spending, saving some expense of government on the because of the waste disposal, government normally gives a tipping fee. And once this tipping fee is there, then you can see this power generation model running effectively. Let's talk about if there is no tipping fee. You're talking about power generation unit of 10 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. Now, yes, we are resolving a problem of waste, but electricity that we are producing, we know in the era of renewable energy and all that, whereby you're getting 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour on a solar from solar and 4 to 5 and 6 cents from wind. This is not going to be a sustainable model, in our opinion. That's what we have studied. And in order to continue this, government will have to either introduce some subsidy into it or a tipping fee model. Otherwise, so Engro, when we were looking at it, we always look for a model which should be sustainable, self-sustainable. At least, maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 years, you might have some assistance from the government, but in the long run, you should be able to stand on your own feet to, take it forward. And then from there, we looked at other options, and we found out that the most optimum and effective, efficient way that you can use this waste is to convert into the fuels. And those fuels should go and substitute other fuels which are being imported by the country. And in one of those options, we have come to the option of RDF, which is the refuse dry fuel. So it's a term which is pretty popular across the globe. So what happens in RDF, that you get the waste and you actually segregate the waste and then compact it, and finally its high heating value components in the waste, they actually get become the final fuel. And it has got a good heating value, almost as good as the heating value of Thar coal. So we'll talk about what RDF is and how it is produced. So globally, RDF is used in co-firing in the industry, and you use this to substitute the imported coal. And there are other plants where 100% of RDF is also being used. So even the people who are in the industry, they know that in the coal plants, there are two kinds of boilers. One is a PC boiler and then there's a CFB boiler. And this CFB boiler has such a big range that it can burn almost anything under the sun. So those kind of boilers also used for 100% firing of RDF. However, with the given, given arrangement that we have in the country, whereby, our cement industry is highly reliant on the coal, and then we have got these imported coal plants, you can easily do 10 to 20% of the blending of this RDF to substitute the same amount of imported coal and save the forex. If you look at, it's not something that we are talking about. It's not an R&D kind of a thing. It's a proven model which already some of the most developed countries have already employed. And even just for your information, because our cement industry, they are very progressive groups as well. So I know few groups who've already started working on the RDF part. So one group with the name of DG Khan, they've been getting 1,000 tons per day of waste, converting into RDF and using over there. There are few players in Karachi who are actually importing some of the RDF from outside countries in order to make sure and test and do the trial runs. So what is the maximum extent that they can use this RDF to? And as we've talked about, again, the concept of what will this RDF do? It will simply go and try to minimize the utilization, the consumption of the imported coal. And imported coal at this point in time, you're talking about, I've seen, this trend is already there. So we used to talk about $5 to $7 per MMBTU in terms of imported coal price before the COVID time frame. But now this has gone up to $17 to $18 per MMBTU. You're talking about $300 plus dollars per ton of imported coal. And just to give you a perspective, we as a country import from 15 million tons to 20 million tons of imported coal. And that's not a small number. I mean, if you're buying it from, let's say, $250 to $300 per ton, it translates to roughly $3 billion to $5 billion in a country where everybody is talking about the trade deficit and current account deficit. This is something that we can do. Now, just to give you an idea, what is RDF? It's a proven technology, and it's not a very complicated process. The only thing that you need to do is you bring in waste, and then you do some unit operation on that. Some of the mechanical engineers would be knowing screening, segregation, just making sure that we have this the components which can be burnt or combusted can be segregated from the metals, glass, and dirt and dust and moisture and everything. And then you do the shredding, and then finally you do the compaction. And here you can see the final shape of this RDF. It's like a pallet which is there, and it's roughly in terms of volume, it is 1/10 of the volume where it started from. And in terms of tonnage, when you talk about, let's say, 1,000 tons of waste, you can get 250 to 300 tons of RDF out of it. So here is a small video. I would request if you can, so this is a plant in Italy which is already doing this. Thank you, Ji. So, these facilities are, it's not going to be a customized design. Off-the-shelf equipment is already available, and that can be, deployed and produced RDF. And obviously, it depends upon some of the challenges would be that in the developed countries, the waste segregation starts from the source. Whereby you have 3 different kinds of dustbins at home for the recyclable and combustible and all that. However, that's something which can be done at the site as well. You segregate the waste and make it to make RDF. Just to give you a perspective of cement industry, we're talking about 170,000 tons per day. So 55 to 60 million tons of cement is produced. And normally the number is from production to imported coal consumption is roughly 7:1. So which means roughly 10 to 15 million tons of imported coal is required. And if you just to give you an idea of the serviceable area market, what is the quantum we are talking about? If you do 20% of RDF blending, it comes out to be 12,200 tons per day. And you're talking about $1 billion of import substitution only by doing the blending of this 20% of RDF, reducing the consumption of imported coal. And in addition to that, we already, we've been operating Thar coal plants on CFB boilers. So there are countries, there are power plants. A few I know in Korea, which are 100% running on RDF and generating steam out of it as well. So we are working, Engro Energy is working with these cement players, and we are also working with some of the petrochemical players, because when you talk about sustainability, you talk about bringing in the green energy, and the energy is normally used in the form of electricity and heat and steam generation within the industry. So electricity problem is slightly simpler, whereby you bring in renewable energy. But if you need steam generation, you need to have some fuel that should be burned. Few players in Punjab, they are also working on biomass burning to produce steam. But this RDF can present a very good opportunity for the players who need steam along with the power as well. So we're talking about roughly 100,000 tons per day of waste, which translates to 25,000 tons of RDF which can be produced. So we've been engaging with the relevant stakeholders since 2018-2019 with SSWMB, with Energy Department, Government of Sindh, even in Lahore with LWMC, and we've conducted multiple visits to understand the entire value chain of this. We are already working with both SSWMB and LWMC to get the allocation of the waste so that we can initiate the feasibility studies. So there is one part which is, which we need to understand, that once you are doing the feasibility, you need to look at the entire year cycle, because in the month of Ramadan, you're getting a different kind of waste. As you talk about Eid al-Azha, you have a different kind of waste available. So you need to base your feasibility on the 12 years intake of the waste that is coming in. So that's what the proposition is, and we believe that the problem of waste is for everybody. It's the government's problem, it's our problem, it's the entire populace problem. While we are resolving this problem, we should be resolving it in the most effective and efficient manner. It should be, there has to be a solution which should be standing on its own feet. And the government should not be, government should make it independent, that, okay, we've given you the incentive at the first place, and now you are on your own, and that kind of a solution comes in the form of when we use this waste to RDF proposition. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'm G. Do we have a mic? There's a question with.
Hello. Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Zaidi. I work with OCAC. I'm a neighbor of Asim. There are two questions, one comment and one question. Number one, in Pakistan we are habitual energy, not creating waste. If you go to smaller towns or villages you have mentioned, you will find that all the bottles which purchase, whether it is a sharbat bottle or apple jam bottle, it is being used in the household to store spices and other things. So that is an advantage, and this is one of the reasons that our percentage of waste generation is slightly lower than the world global standard, number one. Number two, I was sitting in a viva of one of the students who has done masters in waste management. And the result which he has shown about the waste of Karachi percentage, he has worked on 4 or 5 areas in Karachi where spillover waste you have mentioned. The food content of that waste was about 40% of the total waste. So have you considered that, the kind of, the food we waste and throw into the garbage, what will be the use of that, how we are going to separate that?
Well, thank you, Dr. Zaidi. Wonderful questions. First one regarding the observation, and as we talked about the 4R technique, it starts with reduce, reuse, recycle. So I think most of the rural areas, they are still working on the principle of reduce and reuse, and that's definitely something which can be done. And even we have seen 20-30 years back, the glass bottles used to be recycled on a way, you need to preserve that glass bottle. If you break it, you'll have to pay an extra penny for that. So that's number two. You talked about the kind of waste that we are getting. Yes, we have obviously, because we are not doing the segregation at the source, hence the organic content in the waste is pretty high, and we have considered that. And so RDF is going to be one of the main products from that waste. However, there will be other co-products as well. So you bring in a lot of this organic part, you can take it to a digestate kind of a, derivative, which can be used as a fertilizer in the crops. And then there are other ways. So the idea is to get to a, net zero kind of a thing, whereby you start with the waste, you take out RDF, but you're not leaving behind that 60% of the waste. So that has already been considered. And, just to add to it, we are actually, we've gotten the approvals within the organization, and we are waiting for waste allocation. Government of Sindh has already announced the waste allocation to us. However, there are few modalities that we are doing with SSWMB so that we get that LOI. We are at the verge of kicking off a feasibility study whereby, renowned consultants will come, analyze our waste, and then they will, tell us what would be the co-products, the quantity of the co-products that we can obtain from the Karachi waste.
Thank you, Idrees. Do you hear me? It's Mohammad Harisuddin from PPL. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I have two questions from you. That this RDF type of fuel is compatible with our present energy generation plants? Or the second question is that what is the end composition of this RDF fuel? The chemical composition, I mean to say.
I've already talked about, yes, its compatibility is already there, that you can, within the given infrastructure, you can easily substitute 10 to 15% of the already existing solid fuel for these industries. And secondly, it's the composition. It's primarily the carbon part, just like you have in the coal, and then you have 10 to 15% of moisture. Then you have a certain ash content in it. Most of these heating components would be the plastic component and the heating value components, and then you have the paper related waste and all that. So this would be there. And the heating value, you're talking about 2,500 to 3,000 kilocal per kg, which is pretty decent heating value. So just for your information, when we were putting up the power plant at Thar, so obviously what you do is you do some boreholes and you try to find out what kind of coal will come out, but still you are not very confident about the range. So hence we in Thar selected a boiler which can operate in a high range of various kind of components, and that is called a CFB boiler. So there are two kinds of boilers. एक PC boiler होता है which operates in a very narrow range. CFB boiler has the capability to combust almost anything under the sun. That's what. So the technology part is already covered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Nusrat Khan. I'm an environmental consultant and waste consultant as well. Whenever we talk about the waste and waste problem and issues and utilization is really a complicated phenomena. As theoretically there is no segregations, but practically yes. Most of our waste are segregated at source by scavengers. I don't know, I'm just wondering when you're talking about the waste to energies like that fuel, RDF, have you checked the quantity of the fuel which you are looking for? Because most of the valuable high caloric values are already been picked up. So this is going to be very challenging because we have been struggling for that kind of stuff since long. But our waste value, really we fail to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very pertinent question. Yes, we have looked at the chain, and you are very right. Although we are not doing segregation at the home, but the job is already being done by the scavengers, and they are taking out and then there are business models which are operating out there. So for example, PET bottles, they are already been taken out. But what we have seen is that for the manufacture of RDF, we don't need the PET bottles, we don't need the chlorinated plastics. So hence, whatever is getting, so there are two kinds of things. One is the legacy waste, which is already there, and the fresh input that is coming in. We have looked at it, and we believe that that can be converted into RDF easily, despite of the fact that this segregation is already taking place.
That means, have you done the caloric value for the waste is available for that project?
Dr. Sabha, that number is already available. In fact, if you know, Energy Department, Government of Sindh, in collaboration with SSWMB, they have done the estimation, and they have, they also conducted a report, got a report from World Bank as well. The amount of waste is available, which is coming to the landfill site on a daily basis. And with that, Government of Sindh has recently issued LOIs of roughly 8,000 to 10,000 tons per day of the waste. So that waste is coming in.
Ajay, Idrees sir, thank you very much for such a nice presentation and very informative lecture on RDF. I would like to say that the feasibility studies on the segregation are lacking in Pakistan, in Karachi. I am an environmental geologist. I have been Dean of Environmental Geology. I am a Chief Editor of the Economic and Environmental Geology Journal online. So wherever you talk to in PCSIR, in marine environmental centers, so the studies on waste are lacking. And the problem is that there is no scholarship program. Neither the private companies like Engro, even they are not giving the scholarships. So for example, my research student is sitting and she is doing at Jamshoro University, but she wants to work on the waste management and segregation. She has the topic, but if the segregation, if you don't know that 50% food waste, 60%, 70% food waste is here in Karachi is the organic waste, which is a direct feed for the RDF. So I think it will be good as a consulting study. If you want, then we can carry out the feasibility studies for Engro. And of course, Engro is a big house, corporate house, and it should promote research in to get the real data, and which is very much lacking in Pakistan. Thank you.
Right, sir. As an organization, we always look to bridge the gap between academia and industry, and we believe that it is our responsibility to bridge that gap and make the talent and access to the industry. And not only it's good for the academia, but also for the industry, because these fresh pair of eyes, they always bring in great value addition. So I'll have a separate discussion with you, and we'll see how can we collaborate and we can take it forward. Yeah. So thank you very much. That's about it. I'll be available towards the end for any other questions and discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for an excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Suleiman Chawla, who is the Senior Vice President, Federation of Pakistan, Chamber of Commerce, who would be giving a short speech on waste to energy. So I would like to request, sir, to please come on stage. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Imtiaz Ahmed Sheikh, Shahid Khan Sahab, MD Parco, Mr. Muhammad Danish, Abu Bakar Madni Sahab, Assalamu alaikum, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is my immense pleasure to share. I am here, and I bring up the idea to present you to waste to management, waste to energy issue. But I am really pleased that you are already, the Engro is working already on that. So I have a short speech, so I just give you the speech, but I think it's most of the point of my speech has already been covered by Engro, so it is just a speech for you to listen, and that's all. I applaud the initiative of Pakistan Petroleum Institute in the conference, and I am optimistic that the outcome of this conference must find out some solution, recommendation to overcome the energy issue. Current energy situation is very critical as gap between demand and supply is widening and fueled by shortage of water and rising trend in oil and gas coal price internationally. Situation of Pakistan energy mix is showing a critical picture where did we realize to produce energy by all available sources. The primary energy supply consists of 33% natural gas, 22% oil, 18% coal, 14% electricity derived from hydro, nuclear and renewable and imported power, 10.3% imported liquefied natural gas and 1.3% liquefied petroleum gas. While Pakistan has an untapped potential of electricity generation of 1 lakh megawatt from the coal, 1,15,000 from wind and approximately 50,000 from solar. Even we are unable to adopt the use of modern ways for producing energy from waste. Million of ton is produced in almost every mega and big city of Pakistan. Other modern technologies helpful to produce energy from coal gasification. Pakistan is a coal-rich country, but unfortunately coal has not been developed for power generation. The share of coal in Pakistan import bill for the year 2021 has increased significantly to 24% from over 2% in previous years. Currently, only the power plants at Thar Coal Block 2 is running on Indonesia's coal. Though Sindh province was the first one to took initiative of Karachi waste to energy plant, but unfortunately such program and project are still in paper and not even been entered into production. While key advantage of waste to energy is that in addition to serving the waste management community as an efficient final disposal method, it also contributes the energy sector by being a source of energy. It is even more attractive as a source of renewable energy because we have the option to make process carbon natural by restricting burning of non-fossil fuel derived from waste material. However, I think promotion of waste to energy needs to follow a careful designed policy framework. But we need policy instruments that can motivate all the stakeholders involved in the waste management process. Going with the nexus thinking, the impact is much higher and long lasting when such instruments are designed to work across disciplinary boundaries. While concluding, I once again appreciate Pakistan Petroleum Institute of Pakistan for taking the initiative for organizing Sindh Energy Conference, and I am optimistic the expert and speaker of the conference must bring solution to overcome energy issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Our third topic for today is waste to energy potential, challenges, opportunities and challenges, which will be presented by Mr. Stephen Peters, who is Senior Energy Specialist, Waste to Energy, Asian Development Bank. And he would be joining us through Zoom. So let's hear from him.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me. Is that a yes?
Yes, Peter, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. So, Honourable Secretary of Energy, Sindh Government, Chairman Shahid Mahood Khan and CEO Asim Khan from the Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, thank you very much for the invitation. Look forward very much to chatting with you today very quickly. What I wanted to talk about first was a tool that we have developed at the request of an ASEAN government, their Ministry of Finance, looking at comparing the various types of waste to energy interventions available. And there are about 100. So there's things from RDF to biogas, to thermal depolymerization, to incineration, to proper waste to energy projects which have flue gas cleanup related to and attached sanitary hazardous waste landfills, and a range of other activities. So this work's being done on an Excel tool, and if you have a look at the bottom diagram there, that actually is the assessment of a particular ASEAN city, going from all of the particular types of waste and what the options are for them. And you can see on the right-hand side, there are a vast number of processes and opportunities. So there isn't a solution for a waste to energy problem. There are multiple solutions, and if you can hub those solutions together, for instance, putting RDF with biogas to other artisanal recycling, as Engro described, that is a very good solution, especially if you can do it close to where the waste is generated. Now, this tool was funded by the Australian ASEAN Smart Cities Fund, so I have to recognise the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for their invaluable assistance in funding the activity. The work is based on a handbook that we wrote, which is called Waste to Energy in the Age of the Circular Economy. These slides will be available to anybody who asks the organiser for them. That handbook is very easily downloaded, and it talks about a number of different types of interventions. What we've tried to do is not just compare the cost, CapEx, OpEx, energy production for each activity, but we figured out there are about 150 different parameters. These are things like the amount of manpower, what are the amount of persistent organic pollutants released, incineration and some uncontrolled burning, especially with chlorine in the presence of oxygen, can cause these materials which are extremely toxic and long-lived. What are the other pollutants? So what we've done is we've put together a tool which allows us to model the supply chain. So this is a typical supply chain. Collection points, the only difference in Karachi is the collection point is normally manned off the back of a building with a small yard with some very well-fed goats, which take a lot of the organics that come off the side of it. I've been to a number of these locations in Karachi. I've actually spent a lot of time on the ground in Karachi. And so the waste supply chain in Karachi is actually pretty complicated and extremely well developed commercially, but not technically. So we have a number of people who are capturing materials and, for instance, shipping them to Lahore to use in manufacturing processes to make thermal energy, and which is used for industry. Those processes are unfortunately not well controlled and then actually produce a lot of unintended persistent organic pollutants. So it's not a matter of that there's nothing happening. The problem is that there's not maximisation of the indigenous resource, to use the words of other speakers. You're not getting enough value from your waste supply stream. So let's just talk a little bit about the design of the system. So you'll see the source, prevention, preparation for use, recycling, recovery, and disposal. That's the standard waste hierarchy, which people were talking about. And these are the types of processes that occur in them. For instance, under recycling, PET, PP recycling, torrefaction, black soldier fly farms, which is very popular in Indonesia, where alternative proteins are made out of food waste, and then that is used to feed fish and chickens. Under recovery, you have gasification, anaerobic digestion, refuse-derived fuels, and solid recovered fuels, which are similar to each other but not exactly the same. So what we've done is we've modelled these using a technique called agent-based modelling. So each particular process has inputs and outputs. Now, if you have a look at how this is just by example, you will have material go into one process that will then either fall out to the market or will be sold, perhaps energy or perhaps biogas or another type of fuel. And then part of it will then go on to be a byproduct for another fuel. Now, that may sound very complicated, but that's already happening in Karachi at the moment. So these are some of the parameters that we talked about, and there's 150 of them. And each of those parameters has a local value, whether it's the cost of labour, the land, what's land cost, and then we've also added on economic measures, taxation, those sorts of issues. So this is how the model looks like. You create a waste profile. You look at the amount of organics, and 46% is a bit low for Karachi. I would be thinking Karachi would be closer to 55 out of the back of a household. But by the time it reaches the landfill, it can be as low as 40 because materials are degraded and dewatered, or they've been stripped off, like, as I said, with the well-fed goats on the collection facilities, neighbourhood collection facilities. So this process allows us to model the activities that go on. So, for instance, we could model the baseline case in Karachi quite easily if we had the data. We then put in prices and policies. So what are the sales price?
Recording in progress.
Sorry. What's going on there? I need to shut that. What are the sales prices for materials, which is a market rate? This is all commercially available information. Then we look at things like, what's the cost of water? What's the cost of electricity? What's the land cost? What are the labour costs? And we can model that to the local conditions. So this isn't a matter of saying this is what works in Europe or what works in Southeast Asia. It can be modelled specifically for the city in which we want to do it. Prices and policies, again, what's the value of the materials? And then what comes out is we can model the baseline case, but we also can model a number of interventions. So it's not just one. For instance, it might be a RDF plant close to the city, and then another plant, which is a waste-to-energy plant at one of the landfills. There might be some biogas in other locations. So we can model that and come up with a range of inputs. And they're not just financial, they're economic, environmental, and social. So jobs in the formal sector, jobs in the informal sector, what jobs for women, which is a very important issue for ADB. Gender is a very, very important issue for our engagement. And this is how we present it. So we have an output which comes on what the total value is, and then we break it down, all of the numbers down for each particular activity. So again, this presentation will be available to anybody who wants it. Environmental measures, then it produces a Sankey diagram. This is based on a very small town in Indonesia with 600 people, 600 tonnes a day, I should say. And it talks about what the options were for there. So this is we looked at 5 scenarios for this particular city in Indonesia, and we looked at all the economic indicators, the environmental indicators. We then put the model together and looked at economic evaluation. This is a bit of a summary of what goes on. What I want to get to is this. So this is the assessment of the economic shortfall. In other words, how much subsidy is required for each particular activity. And if you look at scenario 1, which is an uncontrolled landfill, there's not much. If you were to do a sanitary landfill, there would be a cost of about $500,000. If you were to do a small waste to energy facility with no subsidy, it would be nearly $2.5 million. Waste to energy with a $35 gate fee will still have a small subsidy, and with a tipping fee about the same. So we went through a range of interventions, and what we found was that doing small eco parks, so doing parks as Engro described, which is RDF, biogas, and then doing some other artisanal activities, maybe bottle recycling, whatever, you actually, by hubbing those locations close to where the waste is, you can reduce the cost to government, and you can enhance a number of other measures. And I'll use an example. This is the breakdown of annual subsidies, by waste to energy subsidy, electricity tariff, and other values. That's just a breakdown based on, and we can do this with the model. So let's look at one of the things that's also very, very important when you talk about a thermal waste to energy plant is its ability to convert high heat value or calorific value into electricity. And so facilities that have very high conversion rates, greater than 30%, actually require less subsidy because they make more energy, depending on the model you use. So we have that sensitivity in the model. This looks at greenhouse gas emissions, and you'll be sitting there thinking, why would a sorting facility have greenhouse gases? Because materials have to go off to a landfill. A portion of it will have to go off to the landfill. You won't be able to process everything at this stage. But surprisingly, the waste-to-energy facilities has a lower baseline GHG emission than the landfill. So that's according to UNEP modelling. This is UPOPs. Now, there was a very big fire recently in South Asia where a large amount of material was burnt, and the conditions for that were pretty catastrophic. I've been to landfills in Karachi, and one of them had a fire at the time I was there, an underground fire. So UPOPs are being made. So if you look at the landfill, the baseline scenario with an open landfill is the worst possible option. The best possible option is to actually look at doing a waste-to-energy plant, but you capture the UPOPs and you concentrate them. So then you need to have a hazardous waste landfill, so it's an additional cost. The ideal scenario is to look at doing an eco-industrial park as described. This is looking at NOx emissions, assuming that biogas is being burnt in an engine for electricity. This is SOx, so waste-to-energy is not a particularly attractive solution for that. This is for particulate matter, so waste-to-energy has a much higher particulate matter release than other technologies. So then what we found was that we could model these activities, and using a multi-layer, multi-level assessment. So what we said is 100 different types of interventions, which had 150 different categories of parameters, whether it's cost, capex, jobs for women, emissions of UPOPs, emissions of SOx, water usage, fuel usage, electricity production. And we modeled all of that. And we've then come out with a set of parameters. This is actually being applied in another ASEAN country as we speak, and we should have the results of this. So this model is still in beta testing. So in fact, this is the first presentation of this model to any ADB developing member country. So you don't need advanced software. We control the parameters in the transformation from one set of parameters to another for each particular activity based on the knowledge we have internally. So it's currently under beta testing. It is available for use. Karachi would be a brilliant location to do a further assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the opportunities in Karachi. So it's not just municipal solid waste that's available in Karachi. There's a lot of processed waste. There's also an enormous amount of cattle dung. So I was involved in a project in Baines Colony, which is looking at using biogas, using cattle dung to make biogas to power the proposed red line buses. My colleague Masood Alam Faruqi is on the call. Masood and I have worked on that for a number of years. So it's not just one thing. So it's not a one set of parameters and one solution. It's actually a diverse set of parameters. And I applaud the speaker who spoke before me, but I didn't quite get his name, so I must apologise for not identifying him by name. But it's looking at indigenous solutions, but looking at a range of them. So, for instance, biogas is useful where you can use it as a transport fuel, but it's not particularly useful for generating electricity because you only get about 38% energy conversion, whereas as a transport fuel, you've got a much lower emissions and certainly a lot less particulate matter for using it in buses. Whereas if you electrify cars, that makes a lot more sense, but then you need to figure out where you get the electricity from. Well, there are fantastic solar resources in Pakistan. And moreover, when you charge a car, that's a battery in itself. So if you can figure out a model where you can do charging at the location after you've travelled, you can then change the energy policy. So all of these types of solutions are coming up. And where the challenge lies is people get confused by all of the different things they can do. And this is a problem across countries. Everybody's confused by it. So in our expectation, we see hydrogen as a potential heavy industry, heavy transport fuel, and as a source of ammonia and methanol. We see electrification of small vehicles as a fantastic idea. And Vice-Chancellor Dr. Sarosh Lodi, that's a great idea with a motorbike. I'd love to buy one. And then you have the situation of what are the other resources you have and where are they? So, for instance, you have a fantastic gas network with Sui gas that can be upgraded or modified to actually include some of these other sources. So to do this, it requires a fairly comprehensive assessment of what are the energy sources, who controls them, and how they could be monetized. And the coordination between large corporates, government, local stakeholders, and small business is very complicated. But given that everybody's in an energy crisis, and also we're coming into a very big fertilizer problem going forward over the next couple of years, it's now time to possibly look at these activities and work together. So on that note, I'd like to finish up. I'd just like to mention one thing that we had a competition 2 years ago to look at digitizing the collection of waste. So using apps on your phone, like Grab or Uber does for transport, and doing that for collection of waste and trading of waste. And there was a young Pakistani startup called Trashit that got to the final. And they were really great. They were really fantastic. It was just a pity. I don't think they've gone on since then. But there is not only Indigenous resources, but there is Indigenous capacity and Indigenous innovation. So we'd be very happy, ADB would be very happy to work with anybody in helping solve these problems and helping solve them in a way that is appropriate to the location. So on that note, I'd like to finish. I'm very happy to answer any questions. So I'll hand back to the speakers. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter, for this wonderful presentation. Does anyone of you have any questions to ask Mr. Peter? Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our fourth topic for today is Indicative Generation Capacity Expansion Plan, IGCEP, 2021 to 30, Implication and Provincial Perspective, which will be presented by Mr. Abu Bakar Madni, who is the Secretary Energy from Energy Department, Government of Sindh. Sir, can you please come on stage for your speech? Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm really appreciate the Pakistan Petroleum Institute of Pakistan to organizing such a wonderful conference on Sindh Energy Conference, which is a need of hour and as per timing. Before I go in detail, let me briefly define the IGCEP, basically to encapsulate power generation addition required to meet the future energy and power demand. The National Transmission and Dispatch Company has prepared 10-year plan for the year 2021 to 2030 in pursuance of the provision of National Electric Power Regulatory Authority Grid Code. The NTDC had developed the IGCEP on the basis of least cost for their system and for the period of 10 years from 2021 to 2020 using generation planning software Plexos. The result of Plexos simulation set shows that to meet a demand of 37,129 megawatt by the year 2020, a generation capacity of 61,112 megawatt is proposed, which includes utilization of existing generation facilities, consideration of committed power plant, and optimization of candidate power plants. The share of the available renewable energy sources stand out to be 7,932 megawatt for solar, 5,005 megawatt from wind, and 749 megawatt from bagases. The contribution of energy generation by indigenous power sources stand at 60% in the year 2021, whereas as per result, indigenization of energy generation is envisaged to achieve 90.8% by 2030, which correspond to higher energy security in the country. The IGCEP 221 mainly divided into three types of project, that is committed, candidate, and existing. So basically committed project are those which have acquired all the approved requirement like Cabinet Committee of Energy approval and the LOS, letter of support, PC1 approved and secured funding. The total capacity of the committed project in IGCEP 2021 and 230 are equivalent to 22,415 megawatt, and it consists of only one project of Government of Sindh, that is 50 megawatt of World Bank finance through Sindh Solar Energy Project at Mandan Jamshoro. Most importantly, the IGCEP 2021 stated in the exemption criteria for project selection that the current IGCEP iteration for renewable energy project will be done under existing target as per Alternative Renewable Energy Policy 2019, subject to at least cost principle and including hydro candidate project in the definition of renewable energy for the purpose of meeting such target to be notified in the definition of Alternate Energy Renewable Energy Policy 2019 by Council of Common Interest in due course. As it has already been conveyed by the Honorable Sindh Energy that Minister that 26 projects equivalent to around 13,445 megawatt of hydropower are included in the list of committed projects, ignoring cheap and affordable wind or solar project prepared by the Government of Sindh. Here, most importantly, I want to inform that Sindh province is blessed with tremendous renewable energy resources like wind, solar, biomass, tidal runoff river, and waste to energy. Only the Explore Wind Corridor is 60 km wide, Garo, Ketimanda, and more than 180 km long, including Theta, Badin, Jamshoro, and Hyderabad, and has the exploitable potential of more than 60,000 megawatt of electric power generation. In the solar energy, the province of Sindh receive an average above about 19 megajoules per square meter of energy throughout the year, which is considered as high level of solar radiation. Therefore, the government of Sindh has raised their concern in the relevant forum like Council of Common Interest that inclusion of hydro generation in the renewable energy was not part of renewable energy in the Alternate Renewable Energy Policy 2019 and will practically finish cheap and environmentally friendly wind and solar projects, most of which being developed in the province of Sindh. Also a result of CCI decision in regard to approval of IGCEP 220, cheaper indigenous coal-based power generation project and cheaper renewable energy-based power generation project has been ignored. Moreover, it was also conveyed that the proposed exemption for the IGCEP 221 do not take into account the unmet demand, load shedding, thereby meaning that the proposed people of this country will continue facing the menace of unmet demand, load shedding during the period these exemptions are in effect. So, with all this fact and figure, the government of Sindh is committed to deliver and propose the cheaper, cleaner and affordable electricity generation to the people of Pakistan. I sincerely thanks to all the speaker and the academician and appreciate the effort of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan and their team for their effort towards energy sector in Pakistan. Thank you. However, I would like to take question if anybody is interested. Yes.
Thank you very much for all these elaborations and interest. It's really very interesting. But I just wonder, we just sitting beside the ocean, we have 1,000 kilometers of our coastline, but I never heard about the alternate energy resource from ocean energies like tidal energy, wave energy, ocean biofuel energy, offshore windmills. We do have mud volcanoes for 6th generation fuel, but I never ever heard about the ocean energy. I don't know, it's a surprise for me.
Yes, you are right. It is the need of hour. But the problem in our Pakistan, you know, we are still depending on the, like our old and the conservative style of making or producing energy. It is really a kinetic and through our sea we can produce. But I think the private sector should come first. Sindh government will make, or the government of Pakistan can make the policy and regulate, but private sector should have come forward and given the proposal to us, then we will, I think, in a position to do this.
Most probably we need to engage academic institutions for that research and development and the private sector for funding that. And this is the way we can develop the other side of the story as well. Because we are rich in resources, but we are not looking at the non-traditional alternate.
I think the lack of technology and the knowledge is the
most probably lack of interest and we are just sea blind nation. We don't look at the sea, we just look at the sea through pollution or from the dinner plates. We haven't looked at the resources of the ocean. We need to create an awareness.
Your idea is very good. I will take consideration.
I'm there for any help and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Any other?
अस्सलामुअलैकुम, मुस्तफ़ा अब्दुल्ला CEO मोरो पावर कंपनी। आपकी स्पीच सुन के बड़ी खुशी हुई और बात बताना मैं चाहता हूँ कि सिंध गवर्नमेंट इज़ रियली वर्किंग हार्ड फॉर विंड एंड सोलर प्रोजेक्ट्स। सिंध ऐसा एक प्रोविंस है जहाँ विंड अवेलेबल है और सरप्लस विंड अवेलेबल है। पाकिस्तान की सारी एनर्जी का मसला विंड सॉल्व कर सकता है और सस्ता सॉल्व कर सकता है। विंड से बिजली बनाएंगे 7 रुपये पर यूनिट बिजली बनेगी। आज जो बिजली LNG से बन रही है 40 रुपये पर यूनिट बिजली बन रही है। तो आई विश यू बेस्ट ऑफ लक, प्लीज़ कीप योर एफर्ट्स। थैंक यू।
IGCEP में हमने सबसे बड़ा इशू यही उठाया
जी बिल्कुल
कि हमारी विंड और सोलर को उन्होंने बिल्कुल निगलेक्ट कर दिया।
IGCEP
हाइडल को उन्होंने ARE में
जी IGCEP तो गले से पकड़ लिया। सिंध को तो विंड को बिल्कुल स्टॉप कर दिया, विंड सोलर बैकयार्ड में धक्के दे दिया।
These are our provincial and federal issues।
जी वो जो हाइड्रो प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं नीलम जलम से, उसकी कॉस्ट आ रही 14 रुपये। तो ये 7 रुपये की बिजली बन रही, इसको नहीं ले रहे। नीलम जलम की हाइड्रो जो साल में 6 महीने आएगी, इसलिए पानी नहीं आता उसमें, वो 14 रुपये की बिजली ले रहे हैं।
These are the issues we are already taking in
IGCEP को पूरा खत्म कर देना चाहिए।
But you know the problem of
Thank you.
government. However, we are trying to bring all these issues
I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the cost of this solar energy production per unit?
He's already given us 7 rupees per
7 rupees.
7 rupees.
From wind also 7.
7 rupees.
But the investment, the initial investment, capital investment is less in solar as compared to wind.
Naheed Ali.
Yes, capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, our fifth topic for today is prospects of coal surface gasification, which will be presented by Ms. Naheed Memon, who is the CEO of Oracle Power and Thar Coal Block 6. So she would be joining us on Zoom from Dubai. And can you please connect her? Thank you.
Okay, can I start? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you can start, please.
Okay, all right. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Shahid Mahmood साहब, Abu Bakar साहब और जो बाकी सारे मेहमान बैठे हुए हैं, a very good afternoon to you. I'm sorry I'm unable to be there in person, but I agreed to speak because I think what the topic at hand is very relevant, and it is also a future that we should certainly be considering and looking at in Pakistan. Is someone going to be able to put the presentation slides up so I can...
Yes, ma'am, we'll be running your presentation side by side. You can please carry on.
Okay, lovely, perfect. Okay, all right. So before I start, I just like to introduce myself and the projects at hand that we have currently ongoing in Pakistan. So Oracle Power is a company which is listed on the market in London. It's a stock market company, and it's sort of historic project, the old project that it has been developing for a while in Pakistan has been the Thar coal mining and power generation project at Block 6 in Thar. And in fact, we were the pioneers, and the feasibilities that we did were later then picked up, and we were there even before Block 2 came on board, etc. But I think that there was, some sort of timing issues, and the project did not close in time, and hence we are still a valid candidate for coal to power as well. And before I joined, just a few minutes ago, there was a discussion on the IGCEP, and someone in the audience said, "Isko band kar dena chahiye." Well, isko absolutely band kar dena chahiye, because for a trillion reasons that one can share. But one of the reasons is also the fact that it does not differentiate between renewable and baseload fuel. And to compare solar and wind generation with an indigenous fuel generation, which basically will enable security in the country, is an oxymoron. You cannot do that. It cannot just be based on costs alone. There has to be a strategy which should be dominant, and a strategy at play. Anyhow, so going forward, we are still in the pipeline for our coal to power plant. Our partners are, can you just change the slide, please? Our partners for Block 6, that is one of our major projects in Pakistan, are China Coal. China Coal is China's ex-Ministry of Coal, and they have developed coal as an asset, which means that they develop it for power, they develop it for sort of other variables that, other sort of products, including gas, liquid. They export it. So coal as a resource is supposed to be developed in that fashion. You're supposed to use it to improve the economy and improve the balance sheet via trade, and also making your imports less, clearly. And yes, I will come to the whole climate change aspect and the environmental concerns, etc., which are all very valid. But most of the countries in the world, first world countries, and not very far from us, are now once again mobilizing coal mining and coal generation, especially now with the war and with the way commodity prices have hit the roof, and where we as a country stand, and so do a lot of other countries like that. Pakistan currently, on that note, if you can just come to what's happening in Pakistan, Pakistan currently faces a huge deficit of natural gas. And if the things continue the way they are currently, then in the next few years, we will have less than 50% of the natural gas that we have had. Actually, I'm unable to see the slides. I'm just going to open my own presentation. Just bear with me for 1 second, please. Yeah, okay, this is better. So, and we import 45% of the total energy requirements currently, right now, annually. And with just to look at some reference points and some figures very quickly. So in 2019, we produced 4.3 million metric tons of oil, and the rest 20%, which was just 20% of the country's petroleum requirements, and the rest was all imported, and which is the 80% of imports. And this is clearly a situation which is very dire, and all of us as a country are seeing the consequences of being so heavily import dependent in fuel. My first slide is actually should be my last slide and my only slide, frankly, and it will just give you a whole snapshot of where we really stand and why coal can then be used to actually fill this gap between your import and export. So people say this is a dirty coal. I mean, it's a bad coal. Yeah, absolutely. It's not the best quality coal. It's lignite. But I can say that this lignite coal is better suited for gasification and for direct or indirect liquefaction as opposed to for power. And I say this because our partners who are already producing 11 million tons of liquid from coal, which is similar to this in China, have sort of done a lot of work on it already. And this is what they say, that this is better for sort of gasification and then onwards for liquefaction if possible. So how do the numbers compare, and where do we really stand? So if you were looking at a good quality coal from Indonesia or South Africa, etc., that type of coal which has a higher calorific value, would produce, and these are approximate figures, but just to give you an idea, would produce 0.015 of MMSCF of syngas. In comparison, Thar coal produces much less, 1/3 of that. And you can do the math yourself, but it comes out to be 0.005 from 1 ton of coal, 0.005 MMSCF. So clearly it is less in value in terms of its heating value, and the output is also less. You need more of this. What does that mean? It means that you need scale. What does that mean? You need big mines, etc. But we have 175 billion tons of this resource in Thar. So I don't think that is a problem at all for us. And in terms of what we do with this then, so, and the use could be, of course, we spoke about the energy gap, but the other problem that we have as a result of the natural gas depleting is urea. We are importing all our urea now, most of it. Our urea plants have shut down. So how does this then come in to ensure food security as well in Pakistan, which, and I'm sure the audience will realize, that is almost as critical a problem as your energy crisis. I think that I hope that we are able to avoid an imminent food crisis, but it could very well be that we live to see that as well. So for urea production, 1.5 tons of standard coal gives 1 ton of urea. But in Thar coal terms, 3.75 tons of Thar coal will give you 1 ton of urea. Again, disclaimer, These are approximate ideas, but I just say this to give you an idea of where Thar coal stands vis-a-vis a better quality coal. Indigenous gas running out. We have an option to bridge this gap, and the option is Thar coal. And whether it is for power, going back to the IGCEP and why this should be absolutely a critical, imperative component of Pakistan's energy policy and strategy, or whether it is for gasification, fulfilling your energy needs, your food security needs, etc. All of this together, the biggest asset and reserve staring at you is your Thar coal. If we can proceed to the next slide, please. Okay, so Thar coal reserves, as I said, 175 billion. Energy requirements, of course, we're not talking about just the private sector. We spoke about urea, then there's transport, industrial, fertilizer, etc., all those sectors. And coal gasification is not a new story at all. It has come of age. And, India, they have public-private partnerships, large, huge, mega public-private partnerships of coal gasification in play as we speak today, because they realize that you simply cannot depend upon the import of gas. And I think all of us have also witnessed that whole story pan out in the last few years and where that has brought us. So importing LNG, etc., is all very well. And I believe that if it is a strategy to sort of thwart immediate problems, absolutely. But countries do not just plan for 2 years. Countries should plan for 20. And if you are really a country which is here to stay, then you should be planning for 200 years. So coal gasification in China, South Africa, the market technology is all established, with South Africa producing diesel since the late 1960s, 50s, sorry. And I say that this is extremely important, especially if you're talking about projects and undertaking work in a country like Pakistan. With all due respect, I heard about a lot of new technologies that were being discussed. These projects require a lot of money. They're very capital intensive. Lenders are very, very hesitant to invest or to lend to projects in Pakistan. And especially when you are lending to a technology which is not proven, you're going to face an uphill task. So yes, you can experiment and you can do prototypes, but to roll out large, strategically, mega scaled projects, you need proven technologies. And on that note, coal to gasification is a proven technology. Next slide, please. I mentioned India. So India last year announced an investment of $55 billion in coal gasification programs intended to achieve coal gasification capacity of 100 million tons per annum by 2030. This is not a story, this is a fact. And you may look the other way, but this is where it's going. And as I said, if you want to be sufficient and secure, then you really need to think about making an investment, but not just, and I also heard about, with all due respect, a little bit that I heard earlier, that the private sector is being asked to constantly come forward. If I can just say at the very outset, projects like this are of a strategic nature, and they do call upon a government's development lens. You cannot expect the private sector to take all risks for projects like this. The government has to play a role, and in Sindh, and I sometimes wear that hat as well, because not that I am from here, but also because I have been a part of that setup. Sindh is is the most progressive province when it comes to policy making with respect to energy and strategy for the future fuel energy security. No other province actually takes it upon itself. And after the 18th Amendment, it has really taken upon itself to go forward. Balki I would also like to say something, Secretary Sahab, aap sun rahe hain कि IGCEP को भी provincial कर दें. वो भी province का अपना IGCEP होना चाहिए ताकि ये मसला ही खत्म हो जाए. So, can we go to the next slide, please? All right. Okay. So lignite, as we spoke about this earlier, is an inferior coal. And to reiterate here, in the gasification progress, lignite is considered a far better input material than hard coal. And this is exactly why China Coal and their technical team verified this, that this coal is good. It's good for this. It's not bad for this. So you will not be wasting precious money. And a recent study suggests that at the right price, diesel can also be produced from Thar coal. And again, approximate figures, but if we operate at the right scale, we can potentially produce it at $4 to around $6 per MMBTU. Again, approximate figures. So there is a problem here. So these are all the reasons why. I mean, the reasons are absolutely there. They're staring at all of us. But how does this happen and how do we move forward? So Oracle, which has been here for the last 10 to 12 years, we've invested in excess of $20 million, doing our feasibilities for Thar mining. Our feasibility was done by SRK, which was like a sort of a benchmark feasibility, which was then picked up by other people as well as references. We again went ahead, whilst we were waiting for coal to power, we went ahead and we started working on coal to gas and coal to liquid very, very proactively. We were enlisted in CPEC for this to get Chinese support. In 2019, Block 6 became a part of that program. And then China Coal was very keen to move forward very quickly. What is most missing? There's no government policy. There is no government policy which exists today. I am unable to make an investment of millions of dollars in feasibility unless and until I understand the development path, just like there is for power. This is all very simple. People kind of complicate it. The simple thing is, if I start doing this and I say, okay, I put my $2 million into building this, what happens after that? Where is my LOI, LOX, X, Y, Z? Which secretary comes in? Petroleum does what? SSGC does what? SNGPL does what? Petroleum division does what? Who guarantees that this project will continue to develop? I cannot start selling it on ice cream vans. So what we did, and this is our consortium, this is who we are, just so that, we developed a policy, and I will come to that. Next slide, please. So who are we? I mean, I'm talking about we developed this policy. So this is ourselves, Oracle Power, and then China National Coal, which I said is a ex-Ministry of Coal. And then we also have a member, an investment partner who is a member of the ruling family of the UAE, who also showed his very, very keen interest and came on board and is still committed to the project once it mobilizes from a perspective of food security, because this is very, very relevant there. So we went ahead and we developed a policy. Can you move to the next slide, please? So we prepared a draft policy for CTG L, and we submitted this policy as a draft to actually mobilize action. We submitted this to the Petroleum Division last year in January 2021. And then last year in March, we sponsored a consultative session with all the stakeholders that there should be deliberation upon this submission. And by no means was this the sort of final piece, or was it supposed to be adopted in that fashion, but this was merely presented to actually start the discussion and start the debate. We are still there. It hasn't moved. And I do know that there is interest. And I do know that I get called on upon many a times that aap kaam kare, is pe aage aa jaye, etc. But this, money, people, investors' money, people's money. I manage public money. My company is listed on the market. People invest in the company, and it's their money. So we don't just play it out. We have to be very sure. This is another problem in Pakistan, and also in the power sector, if I may say so. The power sector has been not really, so far you've had a lot of private investors coming in, but we haven't really had a lot of corporate investment coming in from the markets into the power sector. So hence the risk mitigation has not really been reviewed. High returns have taken care of the risk, but it's not the high returns which are the issue as much as the issue of payments, as the issue of consistency in policy, and the support of the government vis-a-vis what really goes on ground. So that's really important for us. And on that note, I will take you through some of the contours of this policy to give you an idea of what we had suggested and why we think this could be a possible way forward. And before I do that, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. All right. So this is just a snapshot before I talk to you about the policy. If I could, just share China Coal's credentials, which is also important because I spoke about technology. I spoke about mature technologies, proven technologies. So by that same token, if you have a party, an investor, a stakeholder who has the credentials, who has experience, that automatically mitigates risk for the lenders. So China Coal has the largest coal, single plant, urea manufacturing plant in China. It is producing around 11 million tons of like olefin, all these petroleum products using coal, gas from coal. And it has the largest, as I said, plants in China. I mean, this plant, which is called the 2K urea project, is one of the largest in the world. So this is who they are and this is what they do. And they have the experience to actually roll this out, given the right environment, the right policy framework primarily. Next slide, please. Just a little sort of picture of what really can be done with this coal. And of course, this goes back to the very first, my sort of opening of the presentation today, that coal is an asset. It is an asset. And yes, you can ignore the fact that it sits there and let the carbon remain underground forever and ever and ever, or you actually use it in a way which is useful, but balance it out and apply the right technology. So this is just that picture of what really can happen and can be done with this coal. And of course, our coal might not be conducive for all of this, but it may be conducive for some of this. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So again, a picture of what we could possibly do. So we just said, okay, let's just play around with some numbers. And if we were to use, say, 1.5 million tons per annum of coal as raw material, and then we use 1 million, because obviously this would need a lot of power as well, etc. And another 1 million would be used for power. And we have like around 13 million tons of water per annum, then we would essentially produce between 7,000 to 800,000 MMSCF of syngas annually. This, by the way, does not in any way meet our shortage. Our shortage is probably, just 5% of what our shortage is. If our shortage is going to be 2,000 MMCFD, so this is really just 5% of that. And I'm talking about opening a mine of just using 1.5 million tons per annum, and which isn't a lot. So if you were to say use 10 million tons per annum, etc., we would really be talking about a larger, much, much larger project and a bigger contribution to meeting that deficit or the gap in our sort of availability of natural gas. Next slide, please. When you produce gas, you can do a direct liquefaction, DCL. This is direct coal to liquid, or you can do an indirect liquefaction as well, producing gas and then liquid. And there is, of course, a difference in the reasons why you would do either, and the technology, and some difference in the costs as well. These are very expensive projects when it comes to equipment, and depreciation costs in these type of projects are very, very high. Once again, reiterating the fact that you need government support to actually play these out, and you can't just rely on the private sector entirely. Next slide, please. So that hydrogen, I mean, but speaking about new technologies, just my last bit about the whole sort of picture before we move on to the policy, is that the other thing that is happening now is that the world is going to move towards becoming a hydrogen world. And once again, that is again a reality. It's like ignoring the fact that there is 175 billion tons of Thar and not bothering about it. Similarly, you can say, forget it, we don't even know what this is, and forget about it. But this is where the world is going to go. And there has been a debate about electric versus hydrogen for mobility. There has been a debate about hydrogen versus other types of gas for industry and power, etc. But hydrogen is the most abundant element, and it exists all over. It's just that it doesn't exist on its own. It exists in molecules. So you need to split molecules to take out hydrogen. And traditionally, it has been done so from methane, and you can take out the hydrogen from it and then use it, and you can capture the carbon, and that is a good way to do it, and that's blue. You may not capture it, and that's gray, and it's not very effective. It's not very good for the environment, etc. But we can actually, the syngas that we produce from this coal, when we produce this gas, we can also produce hydrogen gas. And this hydrogen gas can be used for mobility. That's a future in Pakistan. I don't know how long it will take us for us to get there. I sometimes get very skeptical, but I continue. I mean, I have hope. Let's see. But it is the future for mobility. But for industry, it's being used all over. I mean, not too far away from us, Korea is becoming a hydrogen economy. India, last year, Modi, in his sort of Independence Day speech, started off saying, I'm going to make my country a hydrogen economy. That's where these countries are going. They have towns and they have industries, areas which just run on hydrogen gas. So hydrogen, using this resource, is also something that one can produce. We can capture the carbon, and if we can capture the carbon and bury it deep down, then we are actually not harming the environment. And there are projects like this which are already in play in Australia. They are producing liquid hydrogen and they are shipping it off to Japan. There are countries which are very, very motivated and committed to the hydrogen fuel process and business. So they require hydrogen, and it can come from this particular asset class and its products, that is syngas, very easily. If one is to construct an all-encompassing project, then of course it is a doable proposition. Next slide, please. Just for the skeptics in the room, where is coal gasification? China has 117 plants. USA has 33 plants. India has many plants. I don't have the number in front of me, but they're constantly coming up. To say that we are now going to carry the mantle for being absolutely clean, yes, we absolutely should, but there's a way to balance it. If you want to ensure that the environment is not harmed by coal gasification or coal to power projects, then let's save our mangroves. Then let's sort of work on our coastlines. Let's do more renewable power projects. But not to do this is not the answer. What needs to be done is to do a balance. Even the most forested countries in the world, by the way, need to do projects which offset carbon emissions. The most forested countries, and I'm involved in a few projects in South America which are currently doing this. And they are the most forested countries, but yet they have projects which offset. They've discovered oil, and you know what they've started doing now? They're not going to stop going, they're not going to sort of throw out Shell or Exxon and say, don't drill. They're going to say, okay, please carry on drilling for oil. But what we're going to do is we're going to work on our mangroves. We're going to do more solar. We're going to do some hydrogen. We're going to do some wind. We offset it. So there's an offsetting mechanism which needs to come into play. And that's how we should be thinking as a country. We should not be thinking with blinders on. That doesn't work. All right. Next slide, please. So this is extremely important, and I would, sort of share this with you and conclude. So the policy, these are the contours of the policy that we have shared earlier with the government, submitted this to the Petroleum Division. The government of Sindh is also privy, and they are very supportive. But obviously, because this is a federal subject, remains a federal subject, and you are all witness to how the CCI has managed all of this, we struggle. So, number one, absence of a policy, no clarity on supply and demand. It's very well for me to give you figures because my partner worked it out and my consultant worked it out and I have read one book on it, etc. It doesn't work. The supply demand analysis here has to come from the government. Mature हो जाता है. आप कंपटीशन उस वक्त इंट्रोड्यूस करते हैं, आप कंपटीशन शुरू में इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं करते, वरना कोई इंक्यूबेशन नहीं होता उस सेक्टर का. तो आपको अगर इंक्यूबेट करना है, you need to actually protect. And of course, there are risks of default. Government of Pakistan is unable to pay its payments. We all witness to the circular debt issues. Every single newspaper writes about that practically and nothing else. Next slide, please. So, of course, I've already said this, but one of the ways, what are the advantages of this policy and why should the government come forward and actually conclude, take a call here. Sufficient gas capacity, we can aim for that. Again, going back, India, China, USA, come on, these countries are first world nations now. They're strong because they don't need to depend. That's important. Exploitation of indigenous resource, again, forget about it or use it. Food security, foreign reserves, look at the import bill that we face. And then, of course, your food security from the fact that we can actually become urea manufacturers and even export urea. I'm speaking to you from Dubai, and UAE has committed to becoming a net exporter of food. It's a desert. These are like eye-openers. One has to really recognize how far-sighted people are. And one way to do this project, public-private partnerships, of course, extremely, you have to think, how do you make it feasible? How do you make this viable for investors to come in? I am currently developing 2 gold mines in West Australia. And I just say this to you, that there's a huge risk there. I might not find gold. I'm spending millions of dollars on those projects. But it's a risk that we take, and the market puts that money in. But why is it going to put the money in West Australia and not in Pakistan? There's no fix for that. I wish I could get my market to commit to projects like this in Pakistan in the absence of a policy. But it's not possible because there are many risks in this country. So we have to mitigate. You can't just expect these big projects to be rolled out in the absence of adequate support. So next slide, please. So what did we suggest? We suggested that SSGC, SSGCL, etc., they simply issue an LOI because they will be buyers, just like you have the energy departments, etc., giving you an LOI that we will buy. NTDC is the buyer, and CPPA will pay you, etc. But the buyer is the government and their agent. In this case, the agencies, the semi-public companies, etc., or government companies, they become the buyers of your liquid or your gas, and they give you this LOI. And the whole thing is built in a similar fashion to the power policy. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel at all. It's already done. And then you bring in the OGRA sort of as your custodian, as a regulator, which sets the price, which views the costs incurred, and whether it's, it depends upon what type of arrangement the government wants to make. And if it's a cost plus scenario, this is all submitted. Very, very similar to what the power policy has set up for us. And as a result of that, you have so much of investment in the power sector. We need something similar or along those lines for the development of C2G and L. Next slide, please. As I said, different ways to develop it. So could be solicited projects, could be projects which are awarded and recommended by the provincial governments. As I said, provincial governments need to now, come online, sort of become more in charge of what goes on in their provinces. Ultimately, it's not just a provincial matter, it's actually a local matter. And I'm of the opinion that economies are also local. They have to be devolved to the local level. So devolving it to the provincial level is a first. We need to get on with that. Public-private partnerships, projects which are covered under bilateral agreements, for example, CPEC or any other country, Kuwait or Qatar or the UAE, etc., if they want to come in as investors, then we have to handhold those that interest and support those type of projects as well, and then give them the right of passage. You have to give right of passage unabashedly. You can't then hold back from giving foreign investment right of passage. And then, as I said, the tariffs, etc., can all be determined using your, the regulatory framework. Next slide, please. There has been a discussion, and over the last sort of year or maybe two, a lot of things, a lot of contracts which were already signed on and which were already undertaken came under review, and the IRRs and the ROEs of projects which are already commissioned were considered, etc. I'm sure everyone in this room is well aware. So one can actually determine a sort of a range and say that fine, the sort of the rate of return that can be allowed should be between, say, 12, 18, whatever percent. But times have changed. The rate of the market rate of interest today is 14%. Very hard. You have to convince investors now to put in money. They're not just going to put in money. If you've got money and you're going to make 10%, you'd rather play golf and put your money in the bank. It's not going to work. People need to recognize that this is not a book. You've got to understand, people put their money into projects which give them a return. And when there are strategic projects, the government has to come in to give comfort to the investors, because they're not going to put all their money on the line. It's not going to work. Next page, please. So just to conclude, we came forward. We are very much in the room. We are sitting at the table. We are happy to progress, but we need to sort of operate with the government. And I mean, I would be very happy if projects of this sort take off, and it's just not one project. Many such projects will be needed. But in order for any of this to sort of go forward, a policy needs to be formulated and support needs to be awarded. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, and if I'm able to do so, I will.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your presentation. Does anyone from the audience have a question? Yes, we have one.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Ji, walaikum salam. Yes,
Dr.
I can hear you.
This is Dr. Zaidi. If you
I'm sorry.
Dr. Zaidi.
Ji.
I just wanted to highlight on the first slide you have mentioned that the local crude production in Pakistan in 2019 you have mentioned it as 4.1 million metric ton a year, and it was 20% of the total production. In the history of Pakistan, we have never produced more than 3.1 million ton local crude, and that was last year, 2020. So please correct that slide. And secondly, that number is not correct. And secondly, on the same slide, you have mentioned that the import bill of 2019 as 16 to 18 billion dollars, something like that. Even last year, 2021, July 22, it was, crude imports were 8 billion, something like that, 8 million ton. So it was much less. The import bill is much higher now. So the 2019 number which you have mentioned are not correct. That was my one observation. And secondly, you have mentioned, the manufacturing, the gas to be made by coal and HSD. Now in Pakistan, we have got Euro 5 specification implemented everywhere. So I do not know the countries you are mentioning like South Africa and the other countries, what quality of diesel they are producing and what is the BTU value of the gas they are supplying to the market. You know there is a limitation of calorific value of the gas we put into our pipeline system which we have got over here.
Of course.
So we would like to know about the calorific value of the gas, which SNG, which you have mentioned over here. What will be the calorific value and what will be the quality of diesel produced by this process you have mentioned over here?
Right, of course. Okay, thank you. So your corrections are noted. I do have references for this data that has been taken, and I will, if I would be very happy to share those references with you as to where this data has come from, and if those references then need to be corrected, then one should do so, because if those references are misquoting, then that should also be corrected. So will absolutely connect with you on that note and send you where this data has come from. This is not something that we've taken from thin air. This is a presentation and some data that we found and is available in the public domain. So that's one. With respect to the quality and the sort of the qualifications and the certifications, I am, of course, there must be those in play, and the calorific value and how much MMBTU is required, etc. I do know that Thar coal is going to be, compared to other coals, a lot more will be required to produce exactly what is the standard gas which goes into the pipelines. So we're literally talking about 3 times the amount of your regular South African coal, for example, if we were to use that as a reference, if you were to use lignite coal. And it is believed that if you use that, then the gas that you produce will be very close to or almost what is required as your pipeline gas. And for diesel, the quality of diesel and what type of which compound, etc., is produced, etc. There is a lot of information that we have. I am not an expert, but China Coal has done extensive amount of work. If you share your details, I will share all of that with you in terms of what type of compounds and what grades, etc., are produced, and the work that they have done at a preliminary stage, looking at the quality of lignite coal that we have at Block 6 specifically, which is not very different from Block 2 or Block 1, etc. We will we can say that the quality is sort of compatible, all right? And we continue, and going back to the other point that you raised about the import and the export, etc. Again, I think that you're pointing out that it's actually 3.1 and not 4.1. In fact, re-establishes my point. And my assistant has just shared with me that the data that we quoted came from the International Trade Administration website, etc., to which I will share with you separately.
Do we have more questions?
Yep. Just a comment and a question. Thank you, Naheed, for a wonderful presentation. Given the international perspective of the super cycle of commodities, and as a country our reliance on the imported fuel, my personal opinion that we should have an emergency and SOS kind of actions towards Thar coal utilization, be it in the form of coal gasification or substituting certain part of imported coal. This should be done at the highest criticality. Just a little question, what is your experience on, obviously the shift on the sustainability and the issues and the limitation on the financing part? Because what we see, you're talking about a equity ceiling of 20 to 30%, you're talking about debt financing. How do you see financing for these CTG, CTL projects, inshallah, once these get matured and you get to that financial close level?
So, all right. Excuse some of the political sort of nuances now that I will be kind of referring to. So China really was our partner in these projects. And I say was because we have somehow managed to deter that commitment. But I believe that that can be invoked. And they're still there. China Coal is still standing with me, but it all depends upon what plays out now in Pakistan going forward. So the commitment from China is, I guess, still in play, not very loud at this point, but can come in. Sinosure, which is their guarantor and insurer, has problems and very, recognizable problems because their payments are all stuck. If we are able to resolve these issues, then I believe that China will lend again and we can mobilize these projects. Having said that, now, because we bat on all sides, we are commercial people. I've been talking to a company in Dakota in the US of A, and they were interested and they've been looking at it, etc. But it's hard. It's very hard for Western money to come in. And I will not say that Western money is not going to go for coal projects or mining projects or dirty projects. I'm a mining company. I'm doing mining in Australia. I mean, it's a dirty business. It's not very clean. It's like almost as bad as coal, and I might find nickel in my mine, which I hope I do, but Elon Musk may talk to me then, but I'm just saying that these are all dirty businesses. Money does go there. It's not that money doesn't go there. We have to mitigate country risk. If we can mitigate country risk, then I don't see financing a problem because these are commercially viable projects. You have a population demand in play and a strategic location in play. These things compounded are a no-brainer when it comes to putting money into a project like this.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your presentation and answering the question. Now, I would request Mr. Asim Murtaza Khan, who is the CEO of Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, to come on stage for closing remarks. Sir, please. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So we come to the end of this Sindh Energy Conference. Abu Bakar Saab, Secretary, sir, you are very fortunate. Sindh province is very fortunate. In this Sindh Energy Conference, we have covered national issues, national energy issues. That saves us one event in Islamabad. We would have done this separately, and we will do it separately. PIP, Petroleum Institute of Pakistan, is named Petroleum Institute, but in effect we deal with energy. It's our legacy. Petroleum is our legacy, but when we do our econometric modeling for the next 25 years of demand supply forecast and the energy mix, we are dealing with energy, all forms of energy all over the country. So we will inshallah have a national level conference which will touch upon all the recommendations emanating from today at the national level. So please be assured, and we will integrate the provincial recommendations as well. Now, coming to the takeaways of this conference, starting from Dr. Sarosh Lodi, Vice-Chancellor, NED University, developing the professional human resource appears extremely important because our indigenous human resource need to cater for whatever we have talked about in this conference. The technology has to be made into reality. Projects have to be turned into practical, working, viable models. So preparation for the human resource by all our educational institutions is extremely important. PIP has a mandate to connect the industry with the academia, and we are following that. That's why the Vice-Chancellor was here. I wish he had been present personally. but he had some other engagements which he could not miss. So we'll continue to follow that agenda and connect the industry with academia and try to develop capacity. The other very overwhelming recommendation coming out is policy formulation. I think that's need of the day. There's no doubt about it. Since we are talking of, we had started off with emphasis on the waste to energy. It's a relatively new subject, and PIP, I feel, is the first to touch upon this subject as waste to energy. And we are also, as an institute, first to hold this provincial conference focusing on the government of Sindh. So the foremost recommendation on the policy would be for the Sindh government to formulate a waste to energy policy. There is a Sindh Solid Waste Management Board. I think that's the first step. That board has a role to play in this. It's headed by the Chief Minister of Sindh or his nominee, but certainly that is the starting point. So the first step has been taken. The following step, formulating a policy, is awaited. Although credit goes to Engro, who have started with this project without a policy. I think that's also an initiative. Collaboration with the government, public-private partnership can follow, but not waiting for a policy, taking a risk in that direction at an enterprise level is appreciated. And we need to, but not forget that a policy will eventually be needed by all those who are interested in pursuing this means of energy. We need in Pakistan all forms of energy, indigenous energy. We need to minimize import of energy. It's not affordable. So that is why, whether it is coal to gas, coal to liquid, waste, biomass, whatever, it needs to be optimized. And a policy will certainly give confidence to our industry here and will also bring in investment. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to thank our sponsor, Pakistan Petroleum Limited, for sponsoring us in this conference. PPL has always been a supporter to the Institute, and we look forward to holding more of such events, engaging with the Sindh government, and offering PIP as an institute to rely upon, to connect with, and we will do whatever we can at the provincial and at the national level. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for wrapping up the conference. Now I would like to request Mr. Asim to present the souvenir to our Secretary Energy, Mr. Abu Bakar Madni Saab. Can you please come and stay, sir? Now I would request Sir Asim to present the souvenir to our speaker, Mr. Muhammad Idrees. Sir, can you please come on stage to receive it? Thank you. The souvenirs of other speakers, they would be couriered to their official addresses. Yes, sir.
Right, just one last word. The deputy head of mission from the Consulate General of Italy in Karachi was here. He had to leave early. Mr. Paolo is here from ENI, Italian company, And before he left, he did offer Italy's assistance in technology and whatever ways, intellectual knowledge, if that can be used in any energy projects of Pakistan. So thank you very much from our side for that, very grateful. We also have Mr. Sohail Bashir here. He's the chairman of the Institution of Engineers in Pakistan, Mr. Sohail Bashir, and I've seen a lot of intellectual support from the Institution of Pakistan. These are the institutes in the country who can really build the energy sector of Pakistan. It's not just PIP alone, it's the industry and the institutions, the academia, which needs to work hand in hand to take the country forward and resolve the energy issues. So I'll leave that at that, please. Thank you very much.
Yes. I thank you all who sincerely contributed to this event in order to make it a success. This wouldn't have been possible without the support of each and everyone present here. Thank you all for your participation. Hope you all have a great day, and kindly proceed for high tea at the back. Thank you so much.